Chapter 391 The Shock of the Major Powers, the Successive Falls of Blood Rain Tower Assassins. And the Tiandao Alliance leader, who was beside him, also showed a look of shock when he saw this scene. Even though he was the Tiandao Alliance leader, he felt incredibly unbelievable right now. After all, the 3 early-stage Saint King sword cultivators from the underworld were actually suppressing and fighting 3 middle-stage Saint King gold medal assassins from the Blood Rain Tower. Such a situation rarely occurred. One must know that these gold medal assassins from the Blood Rain Tower found it very easy to kill cultivators of the same realm. Otherwise, how would they dare to serve as gold medal assassins for the Blood Rain Tower? But now, in front of the 3 sword cultivators from the underworld, they appeared somewhat inadequate. At the same time, the Tiandao Alliance leader also looked at the other assassins from the underworld. This time, the strength of the great saint-level experts among the blood droplets far exceeded their imagination. It seems the underworld is not as simple as we imagined, and the strength of these people who appeared this time is already formidable, let alone the true foundation of the underworld. Looking at the blood droplets, the Tiandao Alliance leader also showed a hint of emotion. At this moment, he also discovered that the strength of the blood droplets far surpassed that of the Blood Rain Tower's gold medal assassins. It could be said that in front of the blood droplets, the Blood Rain Tower's gold medal assassins were like cultivators who had not experienced major battles. And the blood droplets were truly the assassins among those assassin organizations. In fact, this was quite normal. The blood droplets, no matter what, had been tempered through countless assassinations. Although these gold medal assassins from the Blood Rain Tower had also been assassinating, how many great saint-level experts in the entire central region were there for them to assassinate? At the same time, it was impossible for them to assassinate those Saint King Realm cultivators, even though assassinating those Saint King Realm cultivators would be easy for them. But no matter what, they were great saint-level gold medal assassins of the Blood Rain Tower. At this moment, it wasn't just the Tiandao Alliance leader and the old man beside him who were shocked. Everyone else paying attention to this great battle had looks of disbelief on their faces. This included Long Qingfeng, the elder of Tianxian Holy Land. Is this the strength of the underworld? I'm afraid it's not much weaker than my Tianxian Holy Land. Then, he looked at the battle in the sky with complex eyes. Although he had to admit the power of the underworld at this moment, he would not believe that Tianxian Holy Land would be weaker than the underworld. After all, Tianxian Holy Land was, no matter what, a great emperor-level force. Every one of these assassins from the underworld seems to have experienced thousands of battles. Their combat experience is extremely rich. In fact, in front of these Blood Rain Tower assassins, the underworld assassins are the true assassins. The old man beside, Long Qingfeng, also sighed leisurely at this moment, saying that he naturally knew the power of this assassin organization. At the same time, he also completely understood why the underworld chose to go to war with the Blood Rain Tower. With such strong strength in the underworld, how could it fear the Blood Rain Tower? I'm afraid that after this great battle between the underworld and the Blood Rain Tower ends, the underworld will completely enter the ranks of the top forces in our central region. After all, its strength is already not weaker than that of ordinary top forces. It's just that we don't know how powerful the underworld's true foundation is. Another great saint-level expert also spoke leisurely at this moment. When he said this, his eyes held a hint of anticipation. Although the great saint-level experts displayed by the underworld this time were enough for it to enter the top forces, no matter what, had the foundation of quasi-emperor level experts. So, although the underworld could now enter the top forces, they also wanted to know how powerful the underworld's true foundation was. It was impossible for an organization that could produce so many great saint-level experts not to have a peerless expert of the quasi-emperor realm. And their guess was both correct and incorrect. The underworld originally belonged to the Great Xia Dynasty. At this time, the strongest in the Great Xia Dynasty was Fei Peng, and his strength was naturally in the quasi-emperor realm. So, in a way, it did have a quasi-emperor realm expert. What's more, there was also that figure from the Tianji Pavilion. Although he hadn't explicitly joined the underworld, he was, no matter what, in Chang'an City of the Great Xia Dynasty at this time. So, he was half a person of the Great Xia Dynasty. Chu Chan then calmly looked towards the battlefield, but it could be seen that his eyes held desire. Clearly, having just broken through to the true king realm, he also wanted to truly fight a great battle. However, the strength of the assassins from the underworld and the Blood Rain Tower was too great. Even with his supreme bone, he was nothing in front of these assassins. Moreover, the strength of the underworld assassins was so powerful. Just as everyone was watching this great battle, at this moment, the long sword in Dugu Qiubai's hand in the sky seemed to have merged into the darkness. Then, he lightly stabbed towards the Blood Rain Tower assassin in front of him. The next second, the long sword in his hand seemed to have grown eyes, directly piercing through the chest of the Blood Rain Tower assassin in front of him. In the disbelieving eyes of this Blood Rain Tower gold medal assassin, the long sword in Dugu Qiubai's hand directly pierced through his heart. At the same time, he sent the entire person flying with a palm strike. And the Blood Rain Tower assassin looked at Dugu Qiubai opposite him with disbelief in his eyes. He never thought that one day he would be defeated by an assassin weaker than himself. However, at this moment, he could also feel the life force draining from his body. However, Dugu Qiubai ignored him, instead calmly retracting his long sword. Then, he quietly stood between heaven and earth, waiting for this Blood Rain Tower gold medal assassin to fall. After about 10 breaths, this Blood Rain Tower gold medal assassin finally closed his eyes unwillingly. His corpse slowly fell from the sky, and his demise also signified the fall of a great saint-level gold medal assassin from the Blood Rain Tower. Just as Dugu Qiubai had just killed this great saint-level gold medal assassin from the Blood Rain Tower. At this moment, a sword light suddenly lit up in the sky on Li Chuangong's side, and then a silvery white light appeared in the sky. Beyond the light gate, it was as if it was the realm poets yearn for. Sword god Li Chuangang stood between heaven and earth, holding a long sword, as if he himself was the sword god who walked out of this light gate. And as this light gate appeared between heaven and earth, a giant sword emerged from the light gate, and then, without any hesitation, it charged towards the great saint-level assassin from the Blood Rain Tower in front. This was Li Chuangong's sword move. Sword opens the heavenly gate. The terrifying sword opens the heavenly gate instantly killed the great saint-level Blood Rain Tower assassin in front of him. Even his corpse was not left in this world in the end. After doing all this, Li Chuangang picked his nose as if all of this was extremely easy. Chapter 392, The Terrifying Power of the Divine King Body. The top expert of Blood Rain Tower gets beaten up. Right after Li Chuangang killed that assassin from the Blood Rain Tower, the Sword Immortal on the other side also unleashed his immortal flying from beyond the heavens. As the Sword Immortal's ultimate move, the immortal flying from beyond the heavens could truly be described as a sword technique unlike any other in the mortal world. One could see immortals dancing gracefully in the sky, appearing as if they had descended from the heavens. These immortals then swiftly dealt with the Blood Rain Tower assassin while he was momentarily disoriented, while the Sword Immortal lightly wiped the fresh blood from his sword. Having finished, he slowly walked towards Dugu Qiubai and the other man. In the blink of an eye, the three of them had completely dealt with the 3 gold medal assassins of great saint level from the Blood Rain Tower. It was as if these assassins of great saint level were nothing in front of them. As for the blood droplets, they began their relentless slaughter. The Blood Rain Tower assassins couldn't even make a ripple in front of them. In the short time it takes for an incense stick to burn, more than half of the Blood Rain Tower assassins had fallen. Now, the remaining Blood Rain Tower assassins consisted only of 1 assassin at the late-stage Great Sage and several assassins of Saint King level. However, shock and disbelief covered their faces. They had not expected that the underworld would so easily slay so many top experts from their Blood Rain Tower this time. Yet, they still had to use all their strength to fight the underworld assassins, knowing that one careless mistake would lead to their demise here. Naturally, the Blood Rain Tower assassins knew that escaping this time would be extremely difficult. Thus, an assassin of Saint King level from the Blood Rain Tower began to self-destruct. The terrifying aura emanating from him instantly enveloped the entire sky, seemingly intent on killing the underworld assassin of Saint King level. But ultimately, he underestimated the strength of the underworld. The underworld assassin of Saint King level quickly tore open the space in front of him. He then immediately concealed himself within the space. The self-destruction of the Blood Rain Tower assassin of Saint King level caused him no harm. After witnessing the self-destruction of the Blood Rain Tower assassin of Saint King level, the underworld assassins became wary of the remaining Blood Rain Tower assassins before them. They then began to slaughter the remaining Blood Rain Tower assassins. In just a few breaths, all the Blood Rain Tower assassins of Saint King level had fallen. All that remained now were the Blood Rain Tower assassin at the late-stage Great Sage and the Blood Rain Tower top expert, fighting Jiang Taishu in the sky, who was about to enter the Quasi-Emperor realm. As for the other Blood Rain Tower assassins, they had all perished. At this moment, under the assault of the Blood Droplets leader, this Blood Rain Tower top expert, at the late-stage Great Sage, was slowly starting to falter. Although the Blood Droplets leader's cultivation was also only at the late-stage Great Sage, dealing with this Blood Rain Tower top expert was still quite easy. Therefore, as the battle continued, the Blood Rain Tower assassin at the late-stage Great Sage slowly began to fall into a disadvantage. He even sustained numerous wounds. His outer garments were completely soaked in his own blood. However, the Blood Rain Tower assassin was still capable of fighting the Blood Droplets leader. The battle between the two was fierce, yet both, as top experts among assassins, were constantly testing the other's strength. It was just that the Blood Droplets leader consistently suppressed the Blood Rain Tower assassin. Meanwhile, the battle between Jiang Taishu and the Blood Rain Tower top expert in the other part of the sky was even more intense. Jiang Taishu stood in the sky like a blazing sun, simultaneously operating his divine king body to its most terrifying extent. Behind him, it was as if an immortal was assisting him. As for the Blood Rain Tower top expert opposite him, a terrifying blood-red full moon appeared above him, and he looked like a blood wolf standing before that crimson moon. The sharp killing intent in his eyes surged uncontrollably towards Jiang Taishu. Jiang Taishu, however, calmly executed the great emperor peerless technique of his Jiang family. Void refining strangulation. The terrifying spatial power seemed intent on slaying the Blood Rain Tower top expert before him. However, the Blood Rain Tower top expert was also proficient in using the space law, so he constantly used the space law to escape. This was why Jiang Taishu hadn't killed him immediately. After all, the space law inherently belonged to the most advanced law between heaven and earth, and it was still difficult for Jiang Taishu to destroy the space and kill him. But as the Blood Rain Tower top expert continuously utilized the space law, his aura slowly began to weaken. After all, the space law is not something everyone can easily operate. Moreover, Jiang Taishu had the oppressive force of the Divine King Body, and the phenomenon behind the Divine King Body made the entire heaven and earth tremble violently under the pressure. It was as if this entire world was subservient to Jiang Taishu's Divine King Body. Therefore, even if Jiang Taishu faced an ordinary cultivator of the Quasi-Emperor realm now, he would not be at a disadvantage. As a section of the space ahead was shattered by Jiang Taishu, the Blood Rain Tower top expert appeared there in a state of disarray, looking at Jiang Taishu with a trace of disbelief in his eyes. How did you discover that I was in this space? He then voiced the confusion in his heart. I cultivate the void law, so your little tricks naturally cannot escape my eyes. Jiang Taishu looked contemptuously at the Blood Rain Tower top expert before him. His Jiang family had produced a great Emperor Hengyu, so they naturally understood the space law. Of course, the main reason Jiang Taishu cultivated the void law was not because of great Emperor Hengyu, but rather an opportunity he obtained in his early years. After all, the most powerful void law belonged to the Ji family. The void law of the Void Great Emperor was naturally most powerful when cultivated by the Ji family's disciple. However, the person before him was still a weak existence in his eyes. Jiang Taishu immediately threw a punch directly at the Blood Rain Tower top expert before him. This punch carried the scorching sun, making Jiang Taishu seem like the second sun between heaven and earth. This was the Jiang family's peerless technique, a skill once created by great Emperor Hengyu. Just one punch made the entire sky feel as if it were shattering. The Blood Rain Tower top expert in front of him found it even harder to resist this punch. He was instantly sent flying by the punch. At the same time, his body slowly began to shatter under the force of the blow. It was as if his body was currently enduring immense power. Such was the might of a peerless technique created by a great emperor. Just one punch nearly killed a top expert who was about to break through to the Quasi-Emperor realm. Chapter 393: The Great Battle Ends, and a shocked crowd. At this moment, although the body of this top expert from the Blood Rain Tower was continuously disintegrating, however, a vibrant force within his body was continuously piecing his physical form back together. This prevented him from being instantly obliterated by Jiang Taishu's strike. Yet, at this moment, the face of this top expert from the Blood Rain Tower was etched with pallor, and even his long robe had been completely stained blood red. Blood incessantly streamed down his blood-red robe. Even an average top expert would not lose this much blood. It could be said that even Saint Realm cultivators might perish after losing such a volume of blood. However, for this top expert of the Blood Rain Tower, it merely caused his face to turn pale. Your strength is indeed formidable, but the one who dies today will not be me. The top expert of the Blood Rain Tower slowly walked toward Jiang Taishu, his eyes simultaneously holding a look of confidence. Even Jiang Taishu was unsure where the confidence of this old man before him originated. After all, he was already severely wounded. Surviving the initial strike was the best possible outcome. Yet this fellow claimed he would not be the one to die. Jiang Taishu had no intention of continuing the great battle with this person. He felt that this time would be better spent returning to cultivate and breakthrough realm. Immediately, an even more terrifying aura erupted from his body, making him appear like a god king standing between heaven and earth. At this moment, a saying surfaced in the minds of the crowd below. Who in the world is worthy of white robes? Only I, God King Jiang Taishu. This was the true depiction of God King Jiang Taishu. Simultaneously, the aura emanating from the divine king body completely enveloped the entire world once more. At this point, Jiang Taishu had truly pushed his strength into the quasi-emperor realm. Of course, his personal realm was still the Great Sage Perfection realm, but his actual strength had long surpassed the Great Sage Perfection realm and reached the quasi-emperor realm. Impossible, impossible. How could your strength possibly enter the quasi-emperor realm? The confidence that had originally been on the face of the Blood Rain Tower's top expert instantly vanished, replaced by a look of terror as he stared at Jiang Taishu across from him. He had not anticipated that Jiang Taishu, right before him, would erupt with the power exclusive to the quasi-emperor realm at this very moment. It could be said that the current Jiang Taishu was already a top expert, possessing the strength of the quasi-emperor realm. And how could Jiang Taishu possibly continue exchanging pleasantries with this fellow? The aura surrounding him instantly permeated the entire sky, and he slammed a single punch toward the man before him. A terrifying force directly shredded the space, hurtling toward the Blood Rain Tower's top expert. Simultaneously, a terrifying scorching sun instantly appeared in the sky. This terrifying scorching sun continuously radiated a powerful and dreadful aura. Under this powerful and dreadful aura, this top expert assassin of the Blood Rain Tower did not even have a chance to retaliate and was instantly obliterated by the single punch. Not even a corpse remained. Having completed this, Jiang Taishu slowly retracted his aura, then calmly traversed the surrounding space to return to the previous battlefield. Following the demise of this top expert from the Blood Rain Tower, a blood-red celestial phenomenon appeared in the vicinity. This blood-red celestial phenomenon enveloped an area spanning millions of miles, while blood-red droplets continuously began to fall from the sky. These dripping blood droplets caused the area spanning millions of miles to become vibrant with life. Simultaneously, the slightly weaker cultivator within these millions of miles were constantly achieving a breakthrough in their cultivation amidst this blood rain. It was as if when one man achieves the Tao, even his dogs and chickens ascend to heaven. Of course, although this fallen top expert from the Blood Rain Tower had reached the Great Sage Perfection realm and was not far from the Quasi-Emperor realm, the celestial phenomenon of his demise did not completely spread across the entire central region. After all, the central region was still too vast. Such a celestial phenomenon was insufficient to cover it entirely. Furthermore, this blood rain did not have much effect on cultivator above the Saint King level. As for the celestial phenomena left by the few great saint-level assassins from the Blood Rain Tower who had just perished, they were terrifyingly small, covering only tens of thousands of miles. But even so, these celestial phenomena astonished the cultivator within 10,000 miles. After all, so many great saint-level experts had fallen this time. Just as Jiang Taishu finished off this top expert of the Blood Rain Tower, the leader of the Blood Droplets also eliminated the late-stage Great Sage top expert assassin of the Blood Rain Tower. Having completed this, the underworld assassin returned to his original position. As for the great saint-level experts who had come to observe the battle, they stared with disbelief at the underworld assassins who had appeared before them. Especially when looking at Jiang Taishu, who was clad in white, their eyes were filled with disbelief and shock. Jiang Taishu had no intention of lingering with these top experts. He quickly transformed into a beam of light and vanished from spot. Seeing this scene, the other experts from the underworld naturally made the same choice, transforming one after another into beams of light and disappearing from the spot. Instantly, all the assassins from the underworld vanished. Since all the assassins of the Blood Rain Tower had perished here, only the observers remained at the scene, and these observers were still reeling in shock. That top expert from the underworld possesses a divine body. He only needs one opportunity to break through the Quasi-Emperor realm. Perhaps the next time we see him, he will have already achieved a breakthrough to the Quasi-Emperor realm. Amidst the shocked gazes of the crowd, the Tiandao Alliance leader slowly looked in the direction Jiang Taishu and the others had departed and spoke. As he spoke these words, his eyes held a hint of anticipation. He wanted to see exactly how powerful Jiang Taishu would be when he achieved a breakthrough to the Quasi-Emperor realm. The words of the Tiandao Alliance leader were not concealed, so all the great saint realm experts present heard him, and the shock in their eyes intensified as they looked toward the direction Jiang Taishu and the others had left. Furthermore, the fist technique he just displayed seems to have been created by a great emperor. Otherwise, there would be no such terrifying fist technique between heaven and earth. However, the next statement from the old man beside the Tiandao Alliance leader made them feel even more astonished. If the fist technique displayed by Jiang Taishu was indeed created by a great emperor, then why had none of them ever witnessed it? After all, They were familiar with most of the great emperors who had appeared over the past million years, yet not a single emperor had ever created a fist technique resembling a scorching sun. Perhaps there's a great emperor or an alternative righteous path practitioner within the underworld. The Tiandao Alliance leader nodded after hearing the old man's words. Then he seemingly casually uttered this sentence, after which he vanished from spot. Chapter 394, The Blood Rain Tower's Final Decision. The mysterious Heavenly Dao Alliance leader. Although he spoke casually, his words were clearly heard by all the great saint-level experts present. They then looked in the direction the netherworld had departed, their eyes filled with disbelief. It was already unbelievable that the netherworld had defeated the Blood Rain Tower in the recent confrontation, but they never expected the Heavenly Dao Alliance to claim that the netherworld possessed a great emperor or an alternative Dao prover. One must know that whether they were great emperor-level experts or alternative Dao provers, they were the most supreme existences in this world. Even their own forces did not possess such living beings. Therefore, everyone began to take the matter seriously, intending to bring all the news from today back with them. However, some people felt that this was merely the Heavenly Dao Alliance trying to deceive them, as there were currently no great emperor-level experts remaining in this world. As for alternative Dao provers, they were also rarely seen, especially in this era that was rapidly approaching the age of Dharma decline. The events of today quickly spread throughout the entire central region, and the name of the netherworld was completely established across the central region. At the same time, many people learned that the netherworld might possess a great emperor or an alternative Dao prover, even though this claim originated entirely from the Heavenly Dao Alliance. Nevertheless, many people chose to believe this fact. It seems we ultimately underestimated the strength of the netherworld. However, this time the netherworld has completely become a mortal enemy of my Blood Rain Tower. The next time we meet, either I die or they perish. Inside the Blood Rain Tower, the great saint-level expert who had received the news was gazing calmly toward the horizon. Meanwhile, the master of the Blood Rain Tower, standing before him, was looking gloomily at the crowd. He also hadn't expected the netherworld to so easily eliminate their Blood Rain Tower's great saint-level gold medal assassins. Of course, what angered the master of the Blood Rain Tower even more was that the Blood Rain Tower had lost an expert who was about to achieve a breakthrough to the quasi-emperor realm. Initially, he had been very confident about this great battle, but he never expected that in just a single encounter, all of the Blood Rain Tower's assassins would be wiped out by the netherworld assassins. This greatly enraged the master of the Blood Rain Tower. The netherworld's strength shouldn't be that simple, but they are delusional if they think they can confront my Blood Rain Tower head-on. How can my Blood Rain Tower be as simple as they imagine? A great saint-level gold medal assassin slowly stepped forward and spoke, a powerful murderous chi radiating from his face as he reached this point. However, the anger on his face was clearly visible, openly released without any attempt to conceal it. From this, it was clear just how furious the Blood Rain Tower was this time. The actions targeting the netherworld must cease for now. After all, if another major conflict breaks out between us and the netherworld, what awaits us will be mutual destruction. Even if we eliminate the netherworld, the foundation of the Blood Rain Tower will suffer massive losses, making it difficult for us to deter our enemies afterward. Upon hearing the words of the great saint-level gold medal assassin, the master of the Blood Rain Tower shook his head helplessly. Although he also believed the Blood Rain Tower would emerge victorious in such a great battle, if they truly engage in a full-scale war with the netherworld, then the Blood Rain Tower would certainly suffer losses, and they would subsequently be hunted down by their other enemies. The only reason the Blood Rain Tower remained safe was due to its current immense power. The other top assassins also nodded reluctantly upon hearing the master of the Blood Rain Tower's words. They naturally knew what would happen next. It could be said that the loss of these few top assassins had severely damaged the Blood Rain Tower's reputation, so the Blood Rain Tower should not continue clashing with the netherworld for now. Just as the Blood Rain Tower decided not to continue clashing with the netherworld, the Tiandao Alliance leader, on the Heavenly Dao Alliance's side, gathered all of their top great saint-level experts. After all, this time, they had truly witnessed the might of the netherworld. When these great saint-level experts of the Heavenly Dao Alliance were summoned by their alliance leader, they looked at him curiously. They wanted to know the purpose of their alliance leader summoning them this time. At first, we did not attach importance to the true strength of the netherworld. But after today, we must change our strategy. Perhaps the netherworld will become the biggest obstacle to our unification of the entire central region. Therefore, starting today, investigate the netherworld. I must know the netherworld's trump cards and foundation. The Tiandao Alliance leader wasted no time. He calmly swept his gaze over the great saint-level cultivators of the Heavenly Dao Alliance. He then began to speak of his arrangements. The Tiandao Alliance leader's plan was very simple. He wanted the entire Heavenly Dao Alliance to mobilize, to gather intelligence about the Netherworld and determine its true strength. These great saint-level cultivators were somewhat surprised upon hearing the words of the Tiandao Alliance leader. They hadn't expected the Netherworld, which their alliance leader initially disregarded, to suddenly be taken seriously at this moment. Because of this, these great saint-level cultivators also began to take the Netherworld seriously, curious about its true power. Subsequently, all these great saint-level cultivators left the main hall and began discussing how to investigate the existence of the Netherworld. But how could they possibly uncover any information about the Netherworld at this time? Furthermore, all the experts who had appeared since the Netherworld emerged were already recorded in the sight of their respective factions. So even if they investigated, they could only look into the experts the Netherworld had already revealed. Only after seeing the members of the Heavenly Dao Alliance depart did the Tiandao Alliance leader slowly turn his gaze toward the sky. At this moment, his eyes held a complex expression. At the same time, no one knew what the Tiandao Alliance leader was thinking. Clearly, the emergence of the Netherworld had surprised him. I hope the appearance of the Netherworld does not disrupt my plans. Otherwise, no matter how powerful the Netherworld is, I will destroy it. Then he slowly turned his head, and his eyes, still looking toward the sky, were now filled with killing intent. One could simultaneously sense the absolute confidence in the eyes of the Tiandao Alliance leader. It was as if he could deal with the Netherworld, even knowing its immense strength. Following the spread of the Netherworld's reputation, the Heavenly Dao Alliance was not the only faction investigating the Netherworld's true power. Other top factions in the Central region were also scrambling to investigate information regarding the Netherworld. After all, that single sentence from the Tiandao Alliance leader had completely made them realize the complexity of the Netherworld. Of course, the main reason for this was that the Tiandao Alliance leader wanted to push the Netherworld into the spotlight. Chapter 395, The Shocking Central Region, the Paradise of the Xianyuan Family. The main reason the leader of the Heavenly Dao Alliance claimed that the Underworld might possess a great saint or an alternative Dao prover was to push the Underworld to the forefront and attract the attention of the top forces in the Central Domain. In this way, the top forces in the Central Domain would not focus too much on the Heavenly Dao Alliance, making it much easier for the Heavenly Dao Alliance to grow. Of course, not all forces were fools. Top forces like the Tianxian Holy Land naturally guessed the Heavenly Dao Alliance's intentions. Nevertheless, they still began investigating everything about the Underworld. After all, compared to the known Heavenly Dao Alliance, they felt more shock regarding the unknown entity. Besides shock, they also felt a trace of unease toward the Underworld, as no one wanted a mysterious force capable of easily manipulating them existing in their territory. Just as the major forces began investigating the Underworld, news that the Underworld had annihilated a group of experts from the Blood Rain Tower also spread throughout the entire Central Domain. It could be said that from this moment on, the entire Central Domain became a sensation. Cultivators, whether weak or strong, were all discussing everything about the Underworld. I never expected the Underworld's strength to be so formidable. They dealt with the Blood Rain Tower assassins so easily. That's nothing. I heard that the Underworld resolved the Blood Rain Tower assassins effortlessly, and not a single one of their own assassins was lost. Yes, from this, you can see just how powerful the Underworld is. I just don't know how these top forces plan to deal with the Underworld now, or how they view it. How else can they view it? The Underworld is so powerful, they naturally wouldn't dare to become its enemy. After all, who wants another powerful adversary? Although that is true, the Underworld is still an assassin organization. If it remains in the Central Domain, it will be a nightmare for the cultivators here. Everyone was anticipating the actions of the other forces. They wanted to know how the top forces of the Central Domain intended to regard the Underworld. However, the top forces of the Central Domain ignored the discussions of these cultivators. After failing to find any information about the Underworld, they slowly ceased their investigations. Then, they treated the Underworld as they normally would. The Underworld, meanwhile, acted as if nothing had happened, accepting assassination missions, as usual, every day. Nothing happened on the Blood Rain Tower's side either, as if the great battle between the Underworld and the Blood Rain Tower had never taken place. The two major assassin organizations continued their assassination missions. Amidst this tranquility, in a secret realm within the Central Domain, this place seemed like a paradise, yet also like a blessed immortal dwelling. Directly above this immortal dwelling, two grand characters were carved in a vigorous script, resembling a flying dragon and a dancing phoenix. These characters were none other than the legendary Xianyuan. These two characters looked extremely domineering and awe-inspiring. Meanwhile, in Xuanyuan's main hall, dozens of middle-aged men were leisurely sipping tea, appearing quite content. I didn't expect another force to appear in the central domain, and this force's strength is not weak. I just don't know how those sanctimonious fellows outside plan to deal with this force. A burly middle-aged man slowly walked out and spoke, but when he reached this point, his eyes were filled with disdain. Clearly, the burly middle-aged man looked down upon the forces of the central domain. What is the status of your investigation into the underworld? The middle-aged man seated at the head took a sip of tea, then leisurely glanced toward the two youths on the side and asked them unhurriedly. However, a hint of curiosity could be seen in his eyes. Reporting to the Patriarch, we still have no clues regarding the underworld. It seems to have appeared out of thin air. The only lead we have is that the underworld seems to originate from the eastern domain. There are no other clues whatsoever. Upon hearing the middle-aged man's words, the two youths hesitated for a moment, then slowly stepped forward to report to him. They wore expressions of helplessness as they spoke. Clearly, they felt somewhat helpless regarding the underworld. After all, the intelligence organization of their Xianyuan family spanned the entire central domain. Yet even so, they could not investigate the matters of the underworld, which put them in a difficult position. The eastern domain, huh? This matter seems truly interesting. After hearing the two youths report, the patriarch of the Xianyuan family showed a hint of surprise, but his gaze slowly drifted toward the direction of the eastern domain. Big brother, didn't the old ancestor deduce that a prodigy with the human emperor fate has appeared in this generation? Why don't we go look for this prodigy? At this moment, a youthful man dressed in a black robe slowly stepped out and asked the patriarch of the Xianyuan family. A look of eagerness could be seen on his face. Besides the eagerness, there was also a great deal of anticipation on his face. Although the human emperor fate is the most noble fate between heaven and earth, we must see if the person who possesses the human emperor fate in this era is worthy of the Xianyuan family's commitment. If he is not worthy of the Xianyuan family's commitment, why should we seek him out? A middle-aged man holding a folding fan next to the youth slowly took a sip of tea and said. At this moment, there was not much fluctuation in his eyes. However, when mentioning the human emperor fate, a hint of anticipation was still visible on his face. Seventh brother is right. Although the possessor of the human emperor fate is extremely noble, he must be allowed to grow. If he cannot grow, then what use is he to us? The patriarch of the Xianyuan family slowly looked at his younger brother and spoke, but similarly, expectation could be seen in the eyes of the Xianyuan family's patriarch. Doesn't the leader of the Heavenly Dao Alliance possess the Red Dragon Fate? Let the possessor of the Red Dragon Fate from the Heavenly Dao Alliance test the possessor of the Human Emperor Fate. If he has the determination to fight against the possessor of the Red Dragon Fate, then it is not impossible for our Xianyuan family to step out and assist him. Another middle-aged man, who appeared slightly older, slowly stepped out and said, as the continent's foremost top aristocratic family, their Xianyuan family naturally knew a great deal about the central domain. They also knew that the Tianji Pavilion was aware that the leader of the Heavenly Dao Alliance possessed the Red Dragon Fate. Although the Red Dragon Fate was powerful, it was nothing special to their Xianyuan family. Chapter 396, the Xianyuan family's plans, and the Ouyang family ancestors' final decision. Just as that man's voice faded, the eyes of another man flickered with light. Then, he slowly stood up, looked at the assembled experts of the Xianyuan family, and said, perhaps the underworld is related to the possessor of the human emperor fate. After all, the old ancestor calculated that the possessor of the human emperor fate should possess considerable strength now. As soon as his words fell, everyone present turned their gaze towards him, and they began to ponder the matter. According to the calculations of the old ancestor of the Xianyuan family, the fate of the possessor of the human emperor fate is currently extremely brilliant, meaning the growth of the person possessing the human emperor fate has already entered its prime. It can even be said that the possessor of the human emperor fate now commands considerable force. If this is truly the case, then why can't the Xianyuan family find him? Therefore, there's only one truth. The possessor of the human emperor fate is within one of the top powers in the central region, and this power just happens to be concealing him from the Xianyuan family's investigation. If that's the case, then it becomes interesting. The current power of the possessor of the Red Dragon Fate in the Heavenly Dao Alliance is considered among the most supreme in the entire central region. It can even be said that the number of quasi-emperor level cultivators within the Heavenly Dao Alliance is not small. Furthermore, relying on his Red Dragon Fate, he might be able to achieve the Great Emperor realm in this era, but if he clashes with the true possessor of the Human Emperor Fate, he can only serve as a foil. The youthful man from before slowly stepped forward and spoke again. A smile was visible on his face, clearly indicating that he had also realized the interesting aspect of this matter. Although the possessor of the Red Dragon Fate might potentially attain the Great Emperor realm at another time, he appears somewhat weak in front of the possessor of the Human Emperor Fate. Of course, all of this is due to the rise of Xianyuan Human Emperor, who possessed the Human Emperor Fate, which is why the possessor of the Human Emperor Fate is so imposing. Moreover, if those supreme experts knew about both a possessor of the Human Emperor Fate and a possessor of the Red Dragon Fate, then these supreme experts would definitely choose the possessor of the Human Emperor Fate instead of the possessor of the Red Dragon Fate. After discussing for a moment, the people of the Xianyuan family concluded their meeting. After all, the possessor of the Human Emperor Fate had not yet appeared. They only needed to wait for the possessor of the Human Emperor Fate to appear. As for everything else, they couldn't be bothered. After all, the powers in the Central Region had indeed hurt their feelings in the past. The entire Xianyuan family did not want to concern themselves with matters related to the Central Region. And while the Xianyuan family was discussing the possessor of the Human Emperor Fate, at this moment, Chu Fan, the possessor of the Human Emperor Fate, was leisurely situated in the Northern Region. During this time, the 6 great dynasties of the Northern Region had been completely absorbed by Chu Fan. It can be said that these 6 great dynasties have all become vassal states of the Great Xia dynasty, and the armies dispatched by the 2 empires have also been dealt with by them. Having resolved the 6 great dynasties, Zhao Zilong and the others split their forces into 2 groups. One path, led by Chun Jibao, headed towards the Xiaoyao Empire. The other path was led by Yu Fei, and the army he commanded was currently advancing towards the Shuanghua Empire. Between the 2 empires, Chu Fan was more curious about the Xiaoyao Empire. After all, the Xiaoyao Empire's strength was slightly greater, so Chu Fan, curious about the Xiaoyao Empire, was following Chun Jibao's army, constantly pushing toward the Xiaoyao Empire. Naturally, the news of the 2 armies advancing against the 2 empires spread throughout the entire Northern Region. Furthermore, the 2 empires in the Northern Region were currently discussing how to deal with these 2 armies. At this moment, inside the Ouyang family's imperial palace, Ouyang Batian heard the news about this army, but his face remained expressionless, as if the army was not attacking the nation under his control. However, when Ouyang Batian heard that 3 old ancestors of his Ouyang family had perished, a brazen smile appeared on his face. It was as if his enemies had been killed. But for Ouyang Batian, the old ancestors of the Ouyang family were indeed his enemies. Heaven truly helps me. I never thought someone could deal with them. Ha 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 ha. Ouyang Batian's unrestrained laughter spread throughout the imperial palace. At this moment, he had absolutely no intention of caring about the safety of the Shuanghua Empire. He then immediately ordered the guard in front of him to leave. However, even after the guard left, the brazen laughter echoing from inside the imperial palace could still be heard. At this time, these guards also began thinking about how to save their own lives. After all, the entire empire was already rotten, and Ouyang Batian, the master of this empire, had no intention of caring for it. Therefore, they only had the option of saving themselves. Unlike Ouyang Batian's situation, the old ancestors of the Ouyang family were extremely furious at this moment. They never expected that their own Saint King realm cultivators would perish so easily. Meanwhile, the most powerful old ancestor of the Ouyang family, who had reached the Saint King consummation realm, had an icy expression on his face. Upon hearing that army was about to attack their empire, this old ancestor of the Ouyang family looked terrifyingly grim. No matter what, we must eliminate this army. Otherwise, they will forever be the disgrace of my Ouyang family. Following this, the old ancestor of the Ouyang family took a deep breath and slowly spoke. The rage in his eyes was now unleashed, completely unconcealed. Then what should we do? After all, the strength of this army is not weak. The number of Saint King realm cultivators alone should be considerable. Another old ancestor of the Ouyang family shook his head helplessly after hearing him speak. Then he slowly addressed the ancestor at the perfected Saint King realm of the Ouyang family. Gather all the armies within the empire. At the same time, bring along all the Saint King realm experts within the empire. Then, we will directly fight this army to the death. I refuse to believe this army can withstand the might of my entire empire. The ancestor at the perfected Saint King realm of the Ouyang family spoke with murderous intent in his eyes. At this moment, he planned to use the entire power of the empire to eliminate this army. He also wanted the world to know how powerful the empire truly was. Only by mobilizing all the forces of the empire could they deter those restless powers. Otherwise, who knows if some insignificant characters might jump out later. The several old ancestors of the Ouyang family were greatly shocked upon hearing the words of the ancestor at the perfected Saint King realm of the Ouyang family. They never expected that he intended to use all the power within the empire. Chapter 397: The Final Decision of the Frostflower Empire and the Carefree Empire. The old ancestor of the Ouyang family also ignored Ouyang Batian, instead directly mobilizing the entire empire's military, as, in their view, Ouyang Batian was merely a puppet of their empire. And the facts were exactly as the old ancestor of the Ouyang family had anticipated. The empire's army was quickly fully mobilized by them. The entire empire possessed millions of troops, even tens of millions of troops. However, for this great war, the empire only mobilized a few million troops, as it would be impossible for an empire with tens of millions of troops to mobilize all of them. If some troops were not left to guard local areas, the Great Xia Dynasty's army might not even have attacked before their empire collapsed from within. Therefore, only a few million troops could be sporadically mobilized. But these few million troops were the most solid backing for the empire, and at the same time, these few million troops were the strongest army within their empire. They were also the glory of their empire. Upon hearing the command from the old ancestor of the Ouyang family, the three major families of the imperial capital reluctantly sent out all their saint entry-level cultivators. Of course, these cultivators sent out were those openly known. Not a single hidden cultivator appeared. After all, families that could survive for thousands of years were old foxes. How could they fully support the empire? Perhaps they would fully support the empire only when it was close to victory. Otherwise, they would not fully support the empire. Moreover, they knew that the army attacking the empire this time was not weak. In fact, its strength far exceeded that of the empire's army. Therefore, these old foxes were currently thinking about how to befriend this army. In just a few days, the empire gathered several million troops, and at the same time, there were as many as 7 Saint King level experts. Among these 7 Saint King level experts, 4 were the old ancestor of the Ouyang family of the empire, and the other 3 were the old ancestor of the 3 major families of the empire. As for Saint entry-level cultivators, there were over 100, so this army was the most powerful existence in the entire empire. Such an army, even when facing the Xiaoyao Empire, could easily sweep through it, though sweeping all the way to the imperial capital would be impossible. After all, the strength of the Xiaoyao Empire was not weak. While the empire organized millions of troops to resist the Great Xia Dynasty's army, the army led by Yu Fei was also slowly advancing towards the empire. Although the number of troops behind him was not as large as the empire's army, the strength of the cultivators in his army far exceeded the strength of the Ouyang family's empire. Moreover, in his army, there were also top-tier generals like Lu Bu and Zhao Zilong. Simply speaking, any one of the 7 generals of the Yang family, when brought out, was a very powerful vanguard. After all, the strength of the 7 generals of the Yang family had already reached perfected Saint Realm, or even early-stage Saint King. Reporting to the Marshal, the Shuanghua Empire has deployed a total of 6 million troops and 7 Saint King Realm cultivators this time. The assassins of Innate of Luo also reported all the Shuanghua Empire's troops to Yu Fei at this time. Presumably, the Empire still does not know that their trump cards have already appeared in Yu Fei's eyes. I didn't expect a small empire to have 7 Saint King level existences, but even so, it's nothing in the eyes of my Great Xia Dynasty. After hearing the report from the Innate of Luo assassin, Lu Bu's face also showed some surprise. He did not expect that this empire, after having 3 Saint Kings killed by them, still possessed so many Saint Kings. However, for him, Saint Kings were just slightly larger ants. I didn't expect the Shuanghua Empire to actually commit all its national strength to fight us this time. If that's the case, why should we avoid their sharp edge? Let's just sweep through directly. Yu Fei also did not expect the Shuanghua Empire to plan a decisive battle with him. So he waved his hand and gave orders to the generals present. Following Yu Fei's command, Zhao Zilong, Lu Bu, and the 7 generals of the Yang family each led an army, constantly sweeping through the empire cities. Each of them was a top-tier general, and now the empire's troops were all gathered outside the imperial capital, so these cities were taken down by them with no effort at all. In a short period, Yu Fei's army swept through the entire empire. In less than half a month, more than half of the empire's territory had completely fallen. And during this half-month, on the other side, the Great Xia Dynasty's army within the Xiaoyao Empire was also constantly sweeping through. However, the Xiaoyao Empire's choice was different from that of the Shuanghua Empire. The Xiaoyao Empire directly chose to confront the Great Xia Dynasty's army head-on. Instead of recalling all troops to the imperial capital to defend it, they set up a checkpoint within the empire and gathered their troops there. Millions of troops and more than a dozen Saint King-level experts guarded this checkpoint. And of course, even the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire appeared here at this time. This battle will probably be a bit difficult. After all, the strength of this army is not weak. Tianlong Pass, a strategic point of the Xiaoyao Empire. At this moment, an old man standing on Tianlong City looked at the boundless plain below, sighed softly, and spoke. This person was precisely the ancestor of the Xiaoyao Empire. Since learning that such an army had entered the Xiaoyao Empire, the ancestor of the Xiaoyao Empire and those Saint King level experts all went to Tianlong City. And at this moment, they were silently waiting for the arrival of this great Xia dynasty army. No matter how powerful this army is, my Xiaoyao Empire will definitely be able to withstand it. After all, my Xiaoyao Empire is not as weak as they imagine. Another old man beside him sighed silently, but one could see that his eyes were full of confidence. Clearly, he believed that their Xiaoyao Empire could withstand the attack of this army. And the others also nodded silently after hearing this old man's words. Clearly, at this moment, they could only reluctantly believe in their own city and their own strength. I just don't know which force is behind this army that dares to choose to attack my Xiaoyao Empire and the Shuanghua Empire simultaneously. The Ouyang family must be incredibly busy right now. The emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire was a middle-aged man, but on him, one could not see dominance. Instead, one could see a scholar-like young master. At this moment, his eyes, filled with a hint of curiosity, stared in another direction. And this direction happened to be the Shuanghua Empire where the Ouyang family was located. Chapter 398, The Peerless Heavenly Dragon City. Chun Jibao's helplessness. He believed that the Ouyang family at this time would definitely not be having an easier time than their Xiaoyao Empire. After all, the Ouyang family had just experienced internal strife a while ago, and now such an event had occurred, which naturally posed a significant challenge for them. After such a long period of investigation, our Xiaoyao Empire still hasn't found any clues about this army. They seem to have appeared out of thin air. Another middle-aged man beside him shook his head helplessly. This middle-aged man was precisely the prince of the Xiaoyao Empire. The Xiaoyao Empire had not experienced internal strife like the Ouyang family. The relationship between the prince and the emperor in their empire was still very friendly. Moreover, this prince in the Xiaoyao Empire controlled all the intelligence organizations of the Xiaoyao Empire. They absolutely couldn't have appeared in the northern region so easily. It's likely that the power behind this army had a premeditated plan, which is why they appeared in the northern region so easily. The old ancestor of the Xiaoyao Empire shook his head after hearing the prince's words. He didn't believe that this army appeared in their northern region so inexplicably. However, he was also helpless now, because even Saint King-level experts like them couldn't investigate the origin of this army. This meant that this army truly appeared out of thin air, just as the prince of the Xiaoyao Empire had said. And this was what worried these experts of the Xiaoyao Empire. After all, if they knew the origin of this army, they might still have a chance to resist, but if they didn't even know the origin of this army, then how could they resist? An unknown enemy is the most terrifying. No matter what, the number of this army and its experts should not surpass our Xiaoyao Empire. So Tianlong City will ultimately put an end to their advance. A Saint King-level elder of the Xiaoyao Empire slowly stepped forward and spoke at this moment. If they continued to speculate, it would certainly shake the morale of their army. So, he could only quickly come out and interrupt the speculations of these Saint entry-level and above cultivators of the Xiaoyao Empire. The others, after hearing the words of this old ancestor of the Xiaoyao Empire, also silently looked downwards. Tianlong City was the most unique city in their Xiaoyao Empire. One could say that outside Tianlong City was a vast, boundless plain, and Tianlong City itself seemed like a lofty heavenly city. From above Tianlong City, they could overlook the plain below. This also made Tianlong City a place that was easy to defend and difficult to attack. This was also why they chose to make Tianlong City the place for the decisive battle. Otherwise, the Xiaoyao Empire would have probably already sent out troops or gathered all its armies in the imperial capital. At this moment, the experts of the empire silently gazed at the plain below. Although the strength of this army attacking their Xiaoyao Empire was probably not weak, under the circumstances of favorable timing, geographical advantage, and human unity, the experts of the Xiaoyao Empire all tacitly assumed they would win this great battle. After all, the army of the Xiaoyao Empire currently possessed favorable timing, geographical advantage, and human unity. Just as this army of the Xiaoyao Empire was waiting for the army of the Great Xia Dynasty to arrive, Qin Jibao's army was also constantly rampaging through the Xiaoyao Empire. Yuan Qingdu was even more like a golden heavenly god, constantly pushing through the Xiaoyao Empire. This time, he was the main vanguard of this army. Of course, besides him, the main vanguard, Pei Yuanqing, was also constantly wielding his twin hammers, breaking through the defenses of the Xiaoyao Empire. Emperor, according to intelligence from the net of Luo, the Xiaoyao Empire likely intends to fight us to the death in Tianlong City of the Xiaoyao Empire. Moreover, Tianlong City is very unfriendly to us because it is a place that is easy to defend and difficult to attack. Chun Jibao frowned in the main tent at this moment and slowly spoke to Chu Fan beside him. However, even so, a hint of respect could be seen on his face. What kind of existence is Tianlong City in the Xiaoyao Empire? Chu Fan was also a bit surprised after hearing his words. He didn't expect that this white-clothed soldier immortal would also have moments of feeling tricky. So, Chu Fan also became curious about Tianlong City. Tianlong City is a very unique existence in the Xiaoyao Empire. Outside, it is a vast, boundless plain. Although it's a cavalry battleground within, Tianlong City is thousands of meters higher than this plain. It is said that from above Tianlong City, one can overlook the scenery outside, and if our army wants to attack Tianlong City, we must pass through this plain and then directly take down Tianlong City head-on. Chun Jibao slowly explained the situation of Tianlong City at this moment. However, when speaking about the situation of Tianlong City, Chun Jibao's face was always thoughtful. At this moment, he was also pondering how to resolve the issue of Tianlong City. After all, Tianlong City was still too difficult for them. Although the strength of the Great Xia Dynasty had already far surpassed Tianlong City, or rather, had far surpassed the strength of the Shuanghua Empire and the Xiaoyao Empire. But if they wanted to attack Tianlong City this time, their army of the Great Xia Dynasty would definitely suffer losses, which was a situation he was unwilling to see. If that's really the case, then this great battle is indeed a bit troublesome. Chu Fan also didn't expect that this great battle would face such a situation, so he also frowned. After all, if Tianlong City was indeed such a unique existence, then it would indeed be a bit difficult for them to attack Tianlong City. Just the city walls being thousands of meters higher than the plain made them feel a bit tricky. Moreover, the strength of the Xiaoyao Empire's army inside Tianlong City was not weak. Fighting from a higher position already has a great advantage, not to mention that the number of people and troops in the Dragon Empire already held an advantage. Emperor Marshal, actually, we don't need to worry about Tianlong City. If it were just an army, our Great Xia Dynasty would definitely suffer losses, but why should we choose to directly charge with the army? Guo Jia, who was leisurely drinking wine on the side, slowly stood up at this moment and spoke to Chu Fan and the other. After hearing the introduction about Tianlong City just now, he already had a plan in mind. Although it would indeed be very troublesome for their Great Xia Dynasty's army to attack Tianlong City, in this world where martial arts are revered, why should they choose to use an army to break through the mundane? Chu Fan and the other both looked towards Guo Jia after hearing his words. Chu Fan knew that Guo Jia liked to drink, so he usually didn't bother with him, and thus the matter of him drinking in the army was left unresolved. Chapter 399, The Solution to Tianlong City, the visual impact of the Great Xia Dynasty army. Although Chun Jibao and others were quite displeased with Guo Jia's approach, as he himself was a commander who managed his army with strict discipline. However, Guo Jia was a favored confidant of their emperor, so he didn't bother with the fact that Guo Jia had been drinking in the military camp. Now, upon hearing that Guo Jia had a solution for Tianlong City, Chun Jibao, though somewhat disbelieving, slowly turned his gaze towards Guo Jia. General Yuan's strength is among the top tier in the entire Great Xia Dynasty, and of course, I'm referring to his prowess in siege warfare. At that time, General Yuan and General Pei Yuanqing will only need to directly launch an attack on Tianlong City. I don't believe that with the strength of the two generals, they won't be able to breach Tianlong City. And even if the two generals can't resolve Tianlong City, what if the two generals lead 100 or more Saint entry-level generals? Guo Jia slowly articulated his plan at this moment. Although it was indeed somewhat difficult for the Great Xia Dynasty's army to attack Tianlong City, what if General Yuan Qingdu, the golden armored general, directly made a move? He didn't believe that a small pass could withstand this late Saint King great general. Even a pass tens of thousands of meters high could not withstand a Saint King level expert, let alone this Saint King level golden armored general, Yuan Qingdu, a general like a heavenly god. Chu Fan also reacted upon hearing Guo Jia's words. They had initially considered having the Great Xia Dynasty's army directly advance, which would indeed put them at a disadvantage at Tianlong City. But if, as Guo Jia suggested, Yuan Qingdu and Pei Yuanqing of the Great Xia Dynasty directly made a move, then even if the two couldn't easily breach Tianlong City, it would naturally be very easy for them to retreat without injury. In that case, Tianlong City was indeed nothing in front of them. Moreover, the Great Xia Dynasty's army also possessed hundreds of Saint entry-level generals. Therefore, taking down Tianlong City was not a big problem. Furthermore, once the two generals capture the position of Tianlong City's walls, they can open the gates of Tianlong City. At that time, the Great Xia Dynasty's army can directly storm in. And even if they cannot storm in, I believe the Empire's army in Tianlong City will also be unable to resist coming out in an endless stream. Guo Jia continued speaking at this point, and even without him saying anything, Chen Jibao had already made a decision in his heart. It was just that at first, he was still thinking about how to capture Tianlong City using the most perfect method. After all, as the white-clothed soldier immortal, when he wanted to capture a city, he naturally wanted to use the most perfect method. Since that's the case, then Tianlong City will be fully entrusted to the military advisor in Jibao. Chu Fan understood after hearing Guojia's subsequent words. At this moment, they no longer faced any difficulties regarding Tianlong City. So he waved his hand at the two in front of him. Guojia and Chen Jibao quickly bowed to him, and then they began to march. Their current army was not far from Tianlong City, which was why Chen Jibao had begun to ponder, with a worried expression, how to breach Tianlong City. As the large army continued to advance, in just 2 days, they appeared on the plains outside Tianlong City. The plains outside Tianlong City were indeed boundless. The Great Xia Dynasty's million-strong army on it looked like a dense swarm of black ants crawling. At this moment, Chu Fan was clad in golden battle armor, riding a golden qilin, and holding a golden battle spear, making him appear majestic and extraordinary. In front of him were the somewhat disheveled Guojia and the stern-faced Chen Jibao, presenting a striking contrast. As for the very front of this army, it was Yuan Qingdu, clad in golden battle armor, and Pei Yuanqing, clad in silver-white battle armor. Both were the vanguards of this army, and beside them were the two great generals, Dian Wei and Su Chu. The two of them were not wearing the same armor as the army. Instead, they were dressed in plain cloth, making them very conspicuous. Among them, Su Chu even bared his chest, letting his plump belly hang completely exposed. Behind them was Luo Cheng, clad in shining silver armor, and behind him, the 18 riders of Yan Yun, truly a luxurious lineup matched with luxurious generals. As the Great Xia Dynasty's army continuously advanced, the Xiaoyao Empire's army above Tianlong City naturally discovered the arrival of the Great Xia Dynasty's army. Thus, the Saint King-level old ancestors of the Xiaoyao Empire and the Emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire also appeared on the city wall at this time. Their eyes were filled with solemnity as they watched the dark, ant-like army below rapidly advancing. Is this the army that easily captured the 3 vassal states of my Xiaoyao Empire? Even from this distance, one can feel that terrifying pressure emanating from them. As expected, it is indeed the army that easily captured the 3 vassal states of my Xiaoyao Empire. The Saint King-level old ancestor of the Xiaoyao Empire stared at the Great Xia Dynasty's army below with solemnity in his eyes. At this moment, he had completely sensed the terror of this army. It could be said that their Xiaoyao Empire could not field such a terrifying army. If we confront them head-on, my Xiaoyao Empire, even if victorious in this battle, will suffer heavy losses. Another Saint King-level expert of the Xiaoyao Empire beside him also said seriously at this moment. However, when he said this, there was a hint of fortune in his eyes. Clearly, it was fortunate that they occupied Tianlong City this time. Otherwise, if they were to engage in a great battle with this large army outside, even if their Xiaoyao Empire ultimately won, their army would certainly be shattered. It might even result in a mutually destructive outcome. Moreover, the vanguards of this army are not weak. The chi emanating from the general in golden battle armor alone is not something an ordinary Saint King realm cultivator can emit. His cultivation has at least reached late Saint King. The ancestor at the perfected Saint King realm of the Xiaoyao Empire stared at Yuan Qingdu, who was clad in golden battle armor, with solemnity in his eyes. At this moment, he also vaguely sensed the terrifying chi emanating from Yuan Qingdu. He had not expected that the vanguard of this army that appeared this time would have reached such a realm. The chi of the silver-armored general beside him is also not weak. He is probably at least mid-stage Saint King or even late Saint King. Another late Saint King old ancestor beside this ancestor of the Xiaoyao Empire also said with some emotion. At this moment, he naturally also sensed the sharp chi emanating from Pei Yuanqing. Chapter 400 Outside Tianlong City. Yuan Qingdu challenges the enemy. Now, the Saint King-level old ancestors of the Xiaoyao Empire were no longer as calm as they were at the beginning. After all, the visual impact brought by the front view from the Great Xia Dynasty had already astonished them. Moreover, the army below, resembling an iron torrent, completely impacted their thoughts. At the same time, it made them understand why this army could so easily deal with the 3 great dynasties within their empire. Although the strength of the 3 great dynasties within their empire was not particularly strong, it would be difficult to destroy them in a short period. Even when their empire conquered these 3 great dynasties, it took quite some time. But now, this army had resolved the 3 great dynasties so quickly. From then on, they felt that this army was not simple, but they never expected it to be this extraordinary. As Saint King level experts, the people of the Xiaoyao Empire naturally sense the strength of this army. The strength of every soldier has reached the Grotto Heaven realm. I truly don't know what kind of power is behind such an army. At the same time, a Saint King level old ancestor of the Xiaoyao Empire couldn't help but look at the army below and say with emotion. He never expected that the lowest cultivation of the soldiers in this army had reached the Grotto Heaven realm. Such strength would be difficult for their empire to form such an army. I originally thought that with Tianlong City, this great battle would be very easy, but even with Tianlong City, it will take some time for us to win. The emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire also looked at the army below with some helplessness at this time, saying that at first, he thought that with the existence of Tianlong City, they could easily deal with this army. After all, they all knew how to fight from a position of advantage. But now, the strength of this army made them unable to underestimate it. It can even be said that they now fully regarded this army with seriousness. But no matter what, the advantage is with us. As long as we hold our ground, they will have to pay a certain price to break through Tianlong City. By then, we can achieve victory in this great battle. The Saint King level old ancestor of the Xiaoyao Empire, after hearing the words of the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire, also nodded silently. But soon a smile appeared on his face again, a smile that carried a hint of confidence. Apparently, at this moment, he felt that it would not take long for their Xiaoyao Empire to deal with this army. However, he greatly underestimated the strength of the Great Xia Dynasty. As the army continued to advance, this army of the Great Xia Dynasty was completely exposed to the eyes of the soldiers of Tianlong City. At this time, these soldiers of Tianlong City stared intently at the Great Xia Dynasty's army below. At the same time, their eyes were filled with disbelief. They could naturally feel the strong sense of oppression coming their way, but at this moment, they could only helplessly guard Tianlong City. At this moment, Yuan Qingdu, standing at the front of the army, slowly rode his warhorse towards Tianlong City. At this time, his eyes carried a hint of battle intent. Then he slowly raised his head, looking at the Saint King level old ancestors of the Xiaoyao Empire above Tianlong City. Today I, the Great Xia Dynasty, have come to annihilate the Xiaoyao Empire. If the Xiaoyao Empire surrenders now, it is still not too late. Otherwise, when the great army presses on, what awaits you is death without quarter. Then, Yuan Qingdu slowly raised his head and spoke towards the sky. At this moment, the late Saint King Qi belonging to him completely erupted. At this moment, he had no intention of concealing his qi, and the terrifying battle intent on his body also soared into the sky, as if the entire world only contained him, a war god who fought against heaven and earth. At the same time, the golden battle armor on his body was constantly emitting flowing light, making him appear very dazzling below Tianlong City. The Great Xia Dynasty has invaded my Xiaoyao Empire without cause, and now still wants my Xiaoyao Empire to surrender? This is simply a pipe dream, wishful thinking. After hearing Yuan Qingdu's words, the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire immediately showed a look of anger on his face, though at this moment, he did hear the name of the power behind this army. But even so, it couldn't hide the anger in his heart. He looked at Yuan Qingdu below with an angry expression. Those who surrender shall be spared death, otherwise, death without quarter. Yuan Qingdu, at this time, had no intention of wasting words with the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire above Tianlong City. He slowly held the phoenix-winged, gold-plated halberd in his hand and spoke with disdain in his eyes. After speaking, the phoenix-winged, gold-plated halberd in his hand was still constantly emitting golden light. This made him appear very outstanding under the sunlight, as if a golden war god standing between heaven and earth. If your Great Xia Dynasty truly has the capability, then my Xiaoyao Empire will accompany you to the end. I just don't know if your Great Xia Dynasty has the ability to break through my Tianlong City. At this moment, the old ancestor of the Xiaoyao Empire also slowly stepped forward and looked at Yuan Qingdu below, saying, after speaking, his gaze calmly looked towards the army of the Great Xia Dynasty behind him. At this moment, he was thinking that this army of the Great Xia Dynasty was unable to overcome their Tianlong City, which is why they chose to come and persuade them to surrender. And the thoughts of the other Saint King level experts of the Xiaoyao Empire were similar to those of this old ancestor of the Xiaoyao Empire. So they all looked at the Great Xia Dynasty's army behind Yuan Qingdu with a leisurely gaze, as if the Great Xia Dynasty's army truly could not break through Tianlong City. After Yuan Qingdu heard the words of this Saint King level old ancestor of the Xiaoyao Empire, a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth under the inexplicable gazes of everyone. In fact, Chun Jibao's initial order to him was not to persuade the Xiaoyao Empire to surrender. The main order was to test the strength of these Saint King level cultivators of the Xiaoyao Empire. Then, to see how to break through Tianlong City in the fastest possible time. The words he had just spoken were merely polite formalities, and at the same time, he wanted to see if the Xiaoyao Empire would surrender. If the Xiaoyao Empire surrendered, then they would save some effort. But if the Xiaoyao Empire did not surrender, then Yuan Qingdu could rightfully launch an attack directly against the Saint King level experts of the Xiaoyao Empire above. He had not truly displayed his strength for such a long time in battle, so now, after receiving the affirmation from the Saint King level old ancestor of the Xiaoyao Empire, he naturally showed a smile. Chapter 4:01 An unparalleled battle begins. The arrogant and overbearing Pei Yuanqing. Subsequently, Yuan Qingdu's late Saint King Qi burst forth completely, and his entire being ascended into the sky like a golden radiance. In the blink of an eye, he reached the same altitude as Tianlong City. At this moment, illuminated by the sunlight, he appeared like a true golden war god. Then, with a hint of disdain in his eyes, he looked at the ancestor of the Xiaoyao Empire at the Saint King level before him. Come out and fight. Yuan Qingdu's gaze directly locked onto the ancestor of the Xiaoyao Empire at the perfected Saint King realm. For him, only this ancestor at the perfected Saint King realm could truly allow him to display his full strength. His voice echoed through the clouds, reaching everyone in the Xiaoyao Empire. The soldiers of the Xiaoyao Empire on the city wall all turned their gazes towards Yuan Qingdu, and more importantly, their bows were already aimed at him. As soon as the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire gave the command, they would unleash all their arrows towards Yuan Qingdu. However, under the watchful eyes of tens of thousands of archers, Yuan Qingdu's gaze unhurriedly fixed on the ancestor of the Xiaoyao Empire at the perfected Saint King realm. What terrifying qi! Is this truly the qi possessed by a late Saint King expert? The emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire stared at Yuan Qingdu with disbelief, truly feeling the approach of death. It wasn't that he hadn't felt the qi of late Saint King experts before, but he felt that those so-called late Saint King experts were insignificant before this Golden War general. In fact, the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire was right, because Yuan Qingdu's strength far surpassed that of an ordinary late Saint King expert. And at this moment, it wasn't just the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire who felt this. Others in the Xiaoyao Empire also felt that Yuan Qingdu's strength far exceeded their impression of a late Saint King expert. Even the late-stage Saint King ancestor of the Xiaoyao Empire at this moment had eyes filled with shock. Alas, I didn't expect such a talent as you in the world. However, do not think you are invincible just because you possess some strength. The ancestor of the Xiaoyao Empire at the perfected Saint King realm sighed softly, then slowly turned his gaze towards Yuan Qingdu. Then, he slowly stepped off the city wall of Tianlong City. He instantly stood in the sky before Yuan Qingdu, and at the same time, his qi, belonging to the perfected Saint King realm, completely erupted. Then, with a hint of anger in his eyes, he looked at Yuan Qingdu. Whether I am truly invincible or not, we'll only know after a fight. Yuan Qingdu was the #1 general of the Sui dynasty, so how could he fear an old man before him? Thus, holding his phoenix-winged, gold-plated halberd, his eyes filled with battle intent, he looked at the ancestor of the Xiaoyao Empire at the perfected Saint King realm before him. And the ancestor of the Xiaoyao Empire at the perfected Saint King realm, seeing the battle intent on Yuan Qingdu's face, knew that this battle would not end so easily. Thus, a meteor hammer emitting a cold glint instantly appeared in his hand. At the same time, a terrifying power emanated from him. The next second, the meteor hammer in his hand smashed directly towards Yuan Qingdu. Yuan Qingdu, unhurriedly wielding his phoenix-winged, gold-plated halberd, easily blocked the incoming meteor hammer. Subsequently, his golden qi and blood instantly radiated out. With his golden qi and blood as a backdrop, he appeared like a true war god, and some golden light still adhered to his golden armor due to this golden qi and blood. Therefore, the qi emanating from Yuan Qingdu now was incredibly domineering, perhaps related to the golden qi and blood within his body. On the other hand, the ancestor of the Xiaoyao Empire opposite him exuded an aura of destruction, and one terrifying bolt of lightning after another continuously emanated from him. One terrifying, destructive lightning bolt after another seemed to want to destroy this entire world. Then, he charged directly towards Yuan Qingdu. Thus, the two engaged in a world-shaking battle in the sky. Golden light and purple light continuously collided in the sky. The bright sky instantly became dim. At the same time, the sound of weapons clashing spread throughout the entire sky. Yuan Qingdu's qi and blood power was unleashed as if it cost nothing, continuously smashing forward. At this moment, the eyes of these Saint King-level ancestors of the Xiaoyao Empire were filled with envy. By the time they broke through to the Saint King realm, they were already quite old, so their lifespans were not particularly long now. This was why they were cautious when using their chi and blood power, but the Golden War general before them directly released his chi and blood power as if it cost nothing. Such a situation naturally made those with insufficient chi and blood feel extremely envious. Yuan Qingdu, however, paid no attention to their envy. Instead, he rapidly wielded his phoenix-winged gold-plated halberd and charged towards the ancestor of the Xiaoyao Empire before him. The ancestor of the Xiaoyao Empire, on the other hand, began to constantly contend with Yuan Qingdu using the meteor hammer in his hand. After only a few exchanges, the ancestor of the Xiaoyao Empire knew that Yuan Qingdu's strength had exceeded his imagination. Although Yuan Qingdu's realm was only late Saint King, his true strength was already no weaker than his. As the great battle continued, two rays of light constantly traversed between heaven and earth. It was as if only these two constantly moving rays of light remained in the bright sky. At the same time, numerous craters appeared where these two rays of light paused. They looked like craters made by meteorites. At this moment, Pei Yuanqing, who was watching this scene from below, could no longer hold back. He transformed into a silver light and flew into the sky, then looked at the late Saint King ancestor of the Xiaoyao Empire with battle intent in his eyes. Who dares to come out and fight this young master? Then, he looked arrogantly at the Saint King-level ancestors of the Xiaoyao Empire before him. The disdain in his eyes seemed capable of disdaining everyone before him to death. And how could any Saint King-level ancestor of the Xiaoyao Empire endure such disdain? Immediately, an ancestor of the Xiaoyao Empire, holding a long spear, instantly charged towards Pei Yuanqing with his long spear. Pei Yuanqing, excited, used the silver hammer in his hand to block. Chapter 402 The Five Great Generals of the Great Xia Dynasty Battle, the Saint King powerhouse of the free and unfettered empire. Pei Yuanqing was originally in existence second only to Yuan Qingdu in the Sui and Tang world, so his strength was naturally not weak. Furthermore, he had already achieved a breakthrough to late Saint King. Facing an old ancestor of the Xiaoyao Empire who was also late Saint King, he was naturally very relaxed. With just one hammer strike, he made the long spear in the old ancestor of the Xiaoyao Empire's hand tremble incessantly. Even the old ancestor of the Xiaoyao Empire had an expression full of disbelief on his face. He never expected the strength of this young brat before him to be so formidable. Relying on his late Saint King cultivation, he was actually able to make him almost unable to resist so easily. Thinking this, he fiercely and quickly thrust out the long spear in his hand. A dragon roar instantly sounded behind him, and at the same time, a black giant dragon appeared behind him. Then, without any reservation, it directly attacked Pei Yuanqing. Seeing this scene, Pei Yuanqing wore a smile. At the same time, the silver hammer in his hand quickly struck toward the black giant dragon. The terrifying power directly shattered the black giant dragon. At the same time, the silver hammer in his hand continued its momentum, striking toward the old ancestor of the Xiaoyao Empire. Seeing this scene, the old ancestor of the Xiaoyao Empire was horrified. He quickly tore through the surrounding space and disappeared from the sky. Thousands of meters away in the high sky, the old ancestor of the Xiaoyao Empire couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief upon seeing this. At this moment, his eyes were filled with worry and anger when he looked at Pei Yuanqing. He never expected to be beaten so miserably by such a young man. At this time, the Saint King-level experts of the Xiaoyao Empire, standing on Tianlong City, saw this scene and knew that the Saint King old ancestor of the Xiaoyao Empire was no match for the silver-armored young general before them. The few of them nodded and flew toward the sky, simultaneously drawing their weapons. Then they charged directly toward Pei Yuanqing. Seeing this scene, Pei Yuanqing showed no worry. Instead, he grew even more excited. He then wielded his iron hammer and engaged in a fierce battle with these Saint King-level experts of the Xiaoyao Empire. He was like a great general capable of fighting 1,000 men, constantly moving through the group of Saint King-level experts of the Xiaoyao Empire. Dian Wei and Su Chu below naturally couldn't stand idly by. The two of them simultaneously raised their weapons and flew into the sky. They then charged directly at the Saint King-level experts of the Xiaoyao Empire. As for Luo Cheng below, he wore bright silver armor, held a silver spear, and charged straight up. Although Luo Cheng's cultivation had also achieved a breakthrough to the Saint King realm, he was currently only mid-stage Saint King, a minor realm behind Yuan Qingdu and Pei Yuanqing. However, his strength was in no way inferior to these Saint King-level experts of the Xiaoyao Empire. The silver spear in his hand was like a silver dragon, constantly striking toward the Saint King level expert of the Xiaoyao Empire before him. At this moment, the Saint King level expert of the Xiaoyao Empire, who was originally fighting Pei Yuanqing, naturally noticed Luo Cheng. A mid-stage Saint King middle-aged man looked toward Luo Cheng with a thoughtful expression. Then he thrust the long saber in his hand directly toward Luo Cheng. Luo Cheng, without hesitation, swung the silver spear in his hand. In the next second, the silver spear in Luo Cheng's hand collided with the long saber in the man's hand. Because the middle-aged man from the Xiaoyao Empire did not underestimate Luo Cheng this time, the collision did not cause him much harm. Even so, the long saber in his hand was still trembling incessantly. On the other side, Dian Wei and Su Chu charged in like raging demons. Instantly, the entire battlefield underwent a huge change. The more than 10 Saint King level experts of the Zhou Empire were actually unable to suppress the 5 Saint King level experts from the Great Xia Dynasty side. The emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire, standing atop Tianlong City, saw this scene, and his eyes were filled with worry. He never expected that the Great Xia Dynasty would suppress the Saint King level experts of the Xiaoyao Empire by only sending out a few Saint Kings. He was now somewhat relieved that the Great Xia Dynasty did not have many Saint King level experts on their side. Otherwise, the Xiaoyao Empire would definitely lose this time. But what the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire did not know was how could the Great Xia Dynasty only have a few Saint King level cultivators. It was just that the Great Xia Dynasty felt they did not need to deploy too many Saint King level experts right now. Next, as long as we resist the Great Xia Dynasty's army below, we will be fine. After all, it will be extremely difficult for the Great Xia Dynasty's army to attack our Tianlong city. Following this, the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire slowly cast his gaze toward the Great Xia Dynasty's army below. The Great Xia Dynasty's army was terrifyingly strong, but the location of their Tianlong city gave them an advantage. The generals and Saint entry-level cultivators around him also nodded after hearing his words. It was as if the victory of this great battle still belonged to them. However, what they did not know was that the Great Xia Dynasty's army had no intention of launching an attack on the Tianlong city at this moment. Moreover, within the Great Xia Dynasty's army, Chu Fan was currently watching the battle in the sky, enjoying the show. And Guo Jia, beside him, was leisurely drinking the wine in his hand, as if unaware that this was a battlefield. His gaze didn't even glance at the great battle in the sky. Although the Xiaoyao Empire has quite a few Saint King level cultivators, they're indeed lacking compared to Yuan Qingdu and the others. Although Yuan Qingdu's strength is only late Saint King, he is an invincible existence within the Saint King realm. Chun Jibao looked at the great battle in the sky and nodded in satisfaction. But at this moment, a wave of battle intent emanated from him, though it was faint and indistinct. As the white-clothed soldier immortal, how could he not possess powerful fighting strength? Furthermore, Chun Jibao in the world of snow cultivated both the military school's power of slaughter and the Tao of Confucianism. His strength was also an invincible existence within the same realm. And what's more, his realm had now reached the Saint King consummation realm. He said Yuan Qingdu was invincible within the same realm, but he did not count himself. Otherwise, if he, the white-clothed soldier immortal, were to fight Yuan Qingdu, he might even have a slight edge due to his cultivation advantage. Which general of my Great Xia Dynasty is not invincible within the same realm? Chu Fan smiled after hearing his words, then spoke with an air of arrogance. The generals of his Great Xia Dynasty were all famous generals from thousands of years of Chinese history, or top prodigies for novel worlds, so who among them was not invincible within the same realm? Chapter 403 Yuan Qingdu, with his heaven-defying combat power and the shocked experts of the Xiaoyao Empire. Chu Fan had complete confidence in the individuals he had summoned. He believed that the individuals he summoned were invincible among those at the same realm in this world. After all, which of these individuals he summoned wasn't a prodigy? For example, Pei Yuanqing and the others currently on the battlefield. Which of them wasn't invincible when facing someone at the same realm? It could even be said that even if several individuals at the same realm fought them, they could easily handle it, and even defeat their combined offensive. It could be said that although the Great Xia Dynasty had fewer Saint King level experts deployed than the Xiaoyao Empire, Chu Fan believed that the ultimate victory in this great battle would definitely belong to the Great Xia Dynasty. Of course, the reality was quite similar to what he had imagined. At this moment, Yuan Qingdu in the sky, relying on his formidable strength, directly overwhelmed the ancestor at the perfected Saint King realm of the Xiaoyao Empire. Although the ancestor of the Xiaoyao Empire was one minor realm higher than him, Yuan Qingdu, wielding his phoenix-winged gold-plated halberd, appeared terrifying. Amidst the sky-filling thunder unleashed by the ancestor of the Xiaoyao Empire, Yuan Qingdu seemed to be the dominator of that boundless thunder. These bolts of thunder couldn't harm Yuan Qingdu in the slightest. Watching the thunder continuously avoid Yuan Qingdu, the ancestor at the perfected Saint King realm of the Xiaoyao Empire was greatly shocked. At this moment, he still didn't know what kind of existence Yuan Qingdu was, to be able to make the sky-filling thunder avoid him. One must know that this boundless thunder could even injure a great saint-level expert. Yet now, it was so fearful of Yuan Qingdu. In fact, the main reason Yuan Qingdu wasn't afraid of the boundless thunder was that he was the reincarnation of the one in charge of thunder in the heavenly court, so he was naturally close to thunder. And these bolts of thunder naturally couldn't harm him. At the same time, the golden chi and blood emanating from Yuan Qingdu, who held a phoenix-winged gold-plated halberd, were also continuously dispelling the thunder. He appeared like a god of war, seemingly immersed in a golden Tao. The phoenix-winged gold-plated halberd in his hand directly struck towards the ancestor at the perfected Saint King realm of the Xiaoyao Empire. And the ancestor at the perfected Saint King realm of the Xiaoyao Empire continuously swung the wolf-tooth club in his hand. At the same time, a giant wolf, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws, appeared from behind him, then mercilessly charged directly towards Yuan Qingdu, as if to completely devour Yuan Qingdu. However, how could Yuan Qingdu's strength be so weak? He fiercely swung the phoenix-winged gold-plated halberd in his hand, and then a golden rock appeared behind him. This golden rock seemed to want to devour the entire sky. It opened its enormous mouth and directly swallowed the giant wolf in front of it. At the same time, it continuously flapped its wings, which were like the canopy of the sky. The entire sky appeared gloomy under its wings. At the same time, this golden-winged great rock seemed to want to swallow the old ancestor of the Xiaoyao Empire in front of it. Its terrifying huge mouth directly lunged towards the old ancestor of the Xiaoyao Empire. Seeing this, the old ancestor of the Xiaoyao Empire quickly circulated his movement technique, wanting to leave this place, and at the same time, a spatial rift appeared beside him. Clearly, at this moment, he had used all his strength. He appeared in another part of the sky, and after the golden-winged great rock couldn't find its target, it slowly began to dissipate between heaven and earth, but the space it had swallowed was slowly recovering. The ancestor at the perfected Saint King realm of the Xiaoyao Empire breathed a sigh of relief upon seeing this. But soon, his eyes were filled with murderous intent as he looked at Yuan Qingdu. Then he continuously formed hand seals with both hands, and in the next second, the boundless thunder instantly converged. Then, it formed a giant thunderwolf. This thunderwolf appeared in the sky as if to block out the sun in the sky. It was like the legendary heavenly dog devouring the sun. The moment this giant thunderwolf appeared, its gaze fell upon Yuan Qingdu, and its pair of crimson eyes held a hint of ferocity. Then, before Yuan Qingdu could react, it directly swallowed Yuan Qingdu whole. Everyone who witnessed this scene had eyes filled with disbelief. They hadn't expected Yuan Qingdu to be so easily swallowed by the ancestor of the Xiaoyao Empire's move. At this moment, the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire's face even revealed a smile. If the strongest person of the great Xia dynasty was dealt with so easily by his own old ancestor, then the victory of this great battle was almost secured. What they didn't know was that at this moment, no one on the great Xia dynasty side showed any worry, because they all believed that Yuan Qingdu could not be so easily defeated by the ancestor of the Xiaoyao Empire. Even the ancestor of the Xiaoyao Empire didn't show any joy on his face. Instead, he looked solemnly at the giant wolf made of thunder in the sky. Just as everyone in the Xiaoyao Empire thought Yuan Qingdu had fallen, crimson rays of light began to appear in the eyes of the thunderwolf in the sky. At the same time, one could see a difficult pain appearing on the face of this thunderwolf. And the abdomen of this thunderwolf was still flickering with golden rays of light. These golden rays of light seemed to want to completely tear open the thunderwolf's abdomen. Upon seeing this, the old ancestor of the Xiaoyao Empire also realized something was amiss. So he quickly gathered all the power of thunder from his body towards the thunderwolf. But now, no matter how quickly he reacted, he no longer had a chance. A golden ray of light appeared in the thunderwolf's abdomen, and in the next second, Yuan Qingdu, like a god of war holding a phoenix-winged gold-plated halberd, slowly walked out from a large hole he had torn in the giant wolf's abdomen. At this moment, the thunder wolf completely transformed into specks of starlight and dissipated between heaven and earth. The thunder that seemed capable of obscuring the entire sky also slowly dissipated under this terrifying power, leaving only the golden light echoing with the sun in the sky. As for the ancestor of the Xiaoyao Empire at this moment, he looked at Yuan Qingdu with eyes full of disbelief. He hadn't expected this young general of the great Xia dynasty to so easily resolve his strongest attack. And at this moment, Yuan Qingdu had no intention of letting go of the ancestor of the Xiaoyao Empire. He quickly brandished the phoenix-winged, gold-plated halberd in his hand, and he himself moved like an arrow directly towards the old ancestor of the Xiaoyao Empire. Chapter 4:0 For the free and unfettered empire falls into a disadvantage, and the emperor's plan. The terrifying golden chi and blood power continuously absorbed the light emitted by the sun in the sky. This made Yuan Qingdu's power seem inexhaustible. The phoenix-winged, gold-plated halberd in his hand also continuously flickered with light, as if intending to crush the ancestor of the Xiaoyao Empire before him. A terrifying force erupted from his hand, and in the next second, it directly struck the ancestor of the Xiaoyao Empire's mace. The terrifying force directly sent the mace flying from the ancestor of the Xiaoyao Empire's hand. At the same time, this even more terrifying and domineering force directly sent the ancestor of the Xiaoyao Empire flying. He was like a bolt of lightning, smashing heavily into the ground. In an instant, a deep pit the size of a small mountain appeared on the ground, and the ancestor of the Xiaoyao Empire was now in this deep pit, the size of a small mountain. Around the deep pit, streaks of lightning foxes still flickered, and terrifying lightning continuously flowed within these lightning foxes. Of course, above these lightning bolts, golden light continuously circulated. These golden lights seemed to suppress the lightning into the soil below. Yuan Qingdu, holding his phoenix-winged, gold-plated halberd, calmly looked at the deep pit below. At this moment, everyone's gaze turned towards the deep pit below. They also wanted to see how much damage Yuan Qingdu's strike had inflicted upon the ancestor of the Xiaoyao Empire. No matter what, the ancestor of the Xiaoyao Empire was a cultivator at the Saint King consummation realm. So at this moment, he bravely climbed out of the deep pit. However, it could be seen that his face and body were covered in thick mud, from which it was evident that the ancestor of the Xiaoyao Empire had indeed sustained some injuries from that strike. At this moment, he looked extremely disheveled, as if he had crawled out of a coffin. His hair was disheveled and flying everywhere. Blood continuously overflowed from the corner of his mouth, and a pallor appeared on his face. Then, the ancestor of the Xiaoyao Empire raised his head and looked at Yuan Qingdu in the sky. At this moment, there was no longer the initial confidence in his eyes. Instead, there was more solemnity. At this moment, the ancestor of the Xiaoyao Empire also realized how powerful Yuan Qingdu truly was. However, even so, he did not choose to give up. Instead, he once again transformed into a bolt of lightning and engaged in a fierce battle with Yuan Qingdu. A bolt of lightning and a golden light continuously collided in the sky. These two terrifying forces instantly overshadowed the scorching sun in the sky. At the same time, the continuous collision of these two forces caused the small mountains on the ground to continuously crumble. This was also because the two were thousands, even tens of thousands of meters away from the land. Otherwise, the ground would probably have completely collapsed due to their battle. And just as Yuan Qingdu and the ancestor of the Xiaoyao Empire were continuously battling, at the same time, Pei Yuanqing on the other side was becoming more courageous with each battle. Although his opponents were 3 Saint King level experts, he handled them with ease. He was seen continuously striking at the 3 Saint King level elders of the Xiaoyao Empire before him with his silver hammers. The terrifying force caused the 3 Xiaoyao Empire experts before him to continuously retreat. At the same time, on Pei Yuanqing's body, streaks of law of strength were continuously operating. The white light on his body continuously enveloped and moved around him. These white lights seemed to illuminate the entire world. The 3 Xiaoyao Empire experts before him appeared somewhat strained, as they continuously retreated during their battle with Pei Yuanqing. Clearly, even with the 3 of them working together, it was still difficult for Pei Yuanqing. As for Luo Cheng on the other side, he rapidly wielded the silver spear in his hand, and at the same time, a white tiger appeared behind him, continuously attacking the Xiaoyao Empire experts before him. This white tiger dermic manifestation seemed to tear apart the entire sky. Even when facing 2 Xiaoyao Empire experts whose cultivation was higher than his own, Luo Cheng easily handled them. It could be said that in this battle, the Great Xia Dynasty's experts were still gaining the upper hand. As the battle continued to progress, the Emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire and a group of generals also showed worried expressions. They had not expected that so many Saint King level masters on their side would be so worthless in front of the Great Xia Dynasty. Moreover, the Saint King level experts on the Great Xia Dynasty side were all capable of fighting 100. Even though their realm was clearly lower than that of their Saint King masters, they could still suppress and defeat their Saint King realm masters. This instantly gave the Emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire and the generals a bad feeling. At this moment, The emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire also worriedly shifted his gaze from the sky and then slowly looked towards the Great Xia Dynasty's army. His gaze penetrated the Great Xia Dynasty's army and fell upon Chu Fan in the center of the Great Xia Dynasty. Chu Fan, riding a qilin and wearing a golden battle suit, naturally attracted his attention. This person is probably the leader of this Great Xia Dynasty army. After all, only noble people can ride a qilin, and one must know that this is a legendary qilin. Therefore, to quickly resolve this battle, we probably only need to capture this person first. Then, the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire took a deep breath and slowly spoke to the generals beside him. The cultivation of these generals beside him had already reached the entering saint realm, and they had gone far in the entering saint realm, reaching the perfected saint realm. Therefore, he believed that if they went all out, as long as there were no Saint King level experts to block them, they could directly enter this army and bring back Chu Fan from within it. Your Majesty, if that is the case, then let us dispatch cultivators above the true king realm to capture this fellow riding the qilin. Perhaps then our Xiaoyao Empire still has a chance to win. The prince of the Xiaoyao Empire, who was beside the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire, also reacted after hearing the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire's words, and then he looked at Chu Fan with a hint of excitement in his eyes. Although the battle in the sky was very unfavorable for them right now, if they could capture Chu Fan, perhaps they still had a chance to turn the tide. Thinking of this, the other generals also showed excitement and eagerness. Now that they knew the solution, they truly wanted to go into that army and capture Chu Fan. Chapter 405, Chu Fan's Disdain. The 5 tiger generals made 4 moves, the trapped camp. For them, this was the best plan. As long as it succeeded, it would be easy for them to make this army retreat. But how could Chu Fan be captured so easily? Looking at the excited generals and princes in their own ranks, several old ministers of the Xiaoyao Empire wore helpless expressions. Although this plan was excellent for their Xiaoyao Empire, and could even resolve the current crisis if successful, how could the opposing side allow them to capture Chu Fan so easily? Thinking of this, they looked at the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire with worry. However, at this moment, the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire was gazing thoughtfully in Chu Fan's direction, pondering whether this method would truly work. Now, it seems there's no other way besides this plan. If that's the case, then we can only try. After a moment, the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire slowly withdrew his gaze, then gradually turned his attention back to the princes and generals of the Xiaoyao Empire beside him. At this moment, he had made up his mind. And when these princes and generals of the Xiaoyao Empire saw the look in Her Majesty's eyes, they all began to look at Their Majesty with excitement. All generals above the true king realm, except those guarding Tianlong City, should go. We must ensure this person is brought back without fail. He then directly issued the order. Following the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire's command, these generals, princes, and various powerhouses of the Xiaoyao Empire all showed excited expressions. If they could successfully break through the army below and capture that person from within, they would undoubtedly become a legend of this great war, and their tales would be sung throughout the entire Xiaoyao Empire. As the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire finished speaking, the generals of the Xiaoyao Empire began to prepare. Then, thousands of experts from the Xiaoyao Empire, all above the true king realm, leaped down from the city walls and headed towards the Great Xia Dynasty's army. Their cultivation had all reached above the true king realm, so their speed naturally far exceeded that of ordinary cultivators. Thus, in the blink of an eye, they were almost upon the Great Xia Dynasty's army. At this moment, within the Great Xia Dynasty's army, Chu Fan naturally saw this scene, and a mocking smile appeared on his lips. It seems the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire plans to capture the leader to capture the army, intending to seize me first to make you retreat. Chu Fan had naturally guessed the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire's thoughts at this time, and he thoughtfully looked at Chun Jibao beside him as he spoke. However, he showed no worry at all. Even a quasi-emperor realm powerhouse would find it very difficult to take him away from within a million-strong army. In fact, one could say there would be no chance to take him away. After all, they of the Great Xia Dynasty were not without quasi-emperor realm powerhouses. Moreover, this quasi-emperor realm powerhouse's cultivation was an invincible existence within the quasi-emperor realm. Your Majesty, if they seek death, then your subordinate general will go and fulfill their wish. Chun Jibao's eyes also showed a hint of murderous intent at this moment, and he looked thoughtfully at the 1,000-strong true king realm team in front of him. If you make a move, wouldn't it be boring? Chu Fan waved his hand after hearing Chun Jibao's words. Chun Jibao's strength had already reached the perfected Saint King realm, so if he made a move, what chance would the team in front have? Furthermore, Chun Jibao was the commander of the 3 armies. How could he, as commander, make a move so early? 5 tiger generals. This team in front is yours. Then, Chu Fan slowly turned his gaze to the several generals beside him, and these generals were 4 of the 5 Tiger generals who had already broken through to the Saint King realm. Among the 5 Tiger generals in Chu Fan's Great Xia dynasty, aside from Zhao Zilong, the other 4's reputations were not particularly prominent. Of course, the most important reason was that ever since Zhao Zilong constantly competed with Lu Bu, his strength had surprisingly surpassed the other 4 of the 5 Tiger generals by a wide margin. Of course, the main reason was that Zhao Zilong was the first to be summoned, so from the very beginning, he had followed Chu Fan and made a name for himself. This was also why Zhao Zilong was more famous than the other 4 of the 5 Tiger generals. Otherwise, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, and others' cultivation had already reached the early stage Saint King, although they were still 2 minor realms away from Zhao Zilong. However, their strength was also not to be underestimated. After all, no matter what, they were the 5 Tiger generals of Shu Han, on par with Zhao Zilong. Your Majesty, rest assured, I, old Zhang, will surely poke 180 holes in their chests. Zhang Fei had long been unable to hold back. Now, upon hearing Chu Fan's order, he excitedly stepped forward, and the 18-foot snake spear in his hand emitted fierce qi. Guan Yu, beside him, also stepped forward with an arrogant expression, while Ma Chao and Huang Zhong excitedly nodded at Chu Fan. After all, they had rarely made a move since being summoned, so they naturally wouldn't miss such an opportunity now. Even Zhang Liao, who usually spoke little, had an excited look on his face at this moment. As one of the first characters summoned by Chu Fan, Zhang Liao's cultivation had also reached the early stage Saint King as Chu Fan continuously advanced. His strength was already similar to that of Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, and others. As for Gao Shun, who was behind them, his realm was merely the perfected saint realm, but he commanded an army whose cultivation was all above the true king realm. That was the camp breakers from the 3 Kingdoms period. Then, the 5 and Gao Shun led this contingent directly towards the front, charging forward. At this moment, the several individuals all wished they could directly slay the Xiaoyao Empire's team in front of them. However, as soon as the Xiaoyao Empire's team appeared in front of the Great Xia Dynasty's army, they were intercepted by the 18 riders of Yanyan. They would not allow this team to disturb their majesty. Moreover, each of the 18 riders of Yanyan's strength had already reached the late Saint realm and above, with 4 of them even having reached the Saint King realm. Therefore, stopping the 1,000-strong team in front of them was naturally no problem. The 18 riders of Yanyan, like killing machines, directly charged into the 1,000-strong team. The 1,000-strong team, which had initially been disdainful, began to take them seriously after seeing the fierce expressions of the 18 riders of Yanyan. But how could they resist the 18 riders of Yanyan? In just a moment, dozens of people had fallen. Chapter 406, An Overwhelming Battle. The Emperor of the Carefree Empire's Worries. The 18 riders of Yanyan were originally a bug in the Sui and Tang world. And what's more, they were strengthened after coming to this world. Therefore, their current engagement with the 1,000-man army in front of them was a crushing massacre. Furthermore, the strongest among this 1,000-man army was merely a cultivator in the perfected saint realm. However, the strongest among the 18 riders of Yanyan had already reached the early stage Saint King, so this army was nothing in front of them. Moreover, Guan Yu and the others were leading troops to support them from behind. Guan Yu looked proudly at the 1,000-man army in front of him. The azure dragon crescent blade in his hand shot toward a general of the Xiaoyao Empire at the Saint entry level like a meteor. The terrifying power instantly killed the Xiaoyao Empire general at the Saint entry level in front of him. His massive blade continued to swing. The experts of the Xiaoyao Empire were also continuously falling, though the cultivation of these so-called experts was only above the true king realm. As for Zhang Fei, he held the 18-foot long serpentine spear in his hand, a wild smile on his face, continuously using the spear to massacre the Xiaoyao Empire generals of the king realm in front of him. The long spear in the hand of Ma Chao, beside him, was also brandished with fierce might. Ma Chao was a top expert in spear usage during the 3 Kingdoms period. It could even be said that he never lost a major battle against Zhao Zilong. Therefore, his strength goes without saying. Moreover, his current cultivation had also reached the early stage Saint King, and these so-called Xiaoyao Empire generals could not stop his advance in the slightest. On the other side, Huang Zhong was also continuously charging and killing the troops in front of him with his massive blade. As for Zhang Liao behind him, he was also holding a heavenly halberd, continuously slaughtering within this army. Zhang Liao's martial prowess was already good, and after receiving guidance from Lu Bu, he cultivated the heavenly halberd. At this moment, his strength was not weak at all. It could be said that Zhang Liao, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, and the others had now reformed into a different type of 5 tiger generals. After all, Zhao Zilong among the 5 Tiger Generals had already far surpassed the other 5 Tiger Generals, so Zhao Zilong was naturally no longer one of the 5 Tiger Generals, and Zhang Liao just happened to fill that position. Therefore, Zhang Liao and Guan Yu were now the alternate 5 Tiger Generals. Having been summoned here, the distinction between Shu and Wei no longer existed for them, so the strength of this alternate group of 5 Tiger Generals was naturally not weak. At this moment, Gao Shan was also leading the army behind him to continuously crush the 1,000-man army in front. Although the cultivation of the army led by Gao Shan was similar to the strength of the army composed of Xiaoyao Empire experts in front of them. However, the fighting strength of the army led by Gao Shan far surpassed theirs. As Gao Shan led his army into the battle, the 1,000-man army on the Xiaoyao Empire's side completely fell into a disadvantage. They had even started to panic now. Although they had a numerical advantage, in just a moment, their casualties had already reached over 100. It must be known that among the 100 people who fell, every single one had reached the True King realm. The True King realm might not be much within the Great Xia dynasty, but in the Xiaoyao Empire, the strength of a cultivator in the True King realm was considered a core force. Therefore, the falling of a large number of True King realm experts still had a significant impact on the Xiaoyao Empire. After all, a single general in the True King realm could lead 10,000 troops. Too many losses would greatly affect them. Naturally, the great battle below could not be hidden from the masters above Tianlong city of the Xiaoyao Empire, especially the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire, whose face darkened upon seeing so many of his own masters fall. He had not expected this great battle to be so disadvantageous to them. It had only just begun, and in less than a moment, over 100 True King realm cultivators on their side had fallen. This instantly made his expression terrifyingly grim. At the same time, the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire was extremely furious. His eyes filled with rage as he looked at the great Xia dynasty army below. The loss of over 100 True King realm cultivators was a huge blow to their Xiaoyao Empire. It could even be said that it would take decades to recover. Your Majesty, the strength of the army below far exceeds our imagination. If we don't recall the experts of our Xiaoyao Empire, we might lose the top experts of our Xiaoyao Empire in this great battle, and that would be a huge loss. An old minister of the Xiaoyao Empire stepped forward and bowed to the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire, speaking with visible panic in his eyes. Of course, more than that, his expression held disbelief. He also had not expected the strength of the great Xia dynasty to be so terrifying. The problem is, how are we supposed to recall these experts below now? After all, the army down there won't be stupid enough to let them come up. The emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire naturally knew what the old minister meant, so he spoke to the old minister with a look of gloom in his eyes. If he were the great Xia dynasty army on the opposite side, given such a good opportunity, he absolutely would not allow the experts of the Xiaoyao Empire to return. Your Majesty, why don't we just fight them directly? That way, we might still have a chance to win. Otherwise, if the experts of our Xiaoyao Empire are truly exhausted, even with Tianlong city as a defense, it will be difficult for us to withstand their attack. At this moment, a general wearing a set of golden battle armor, standing beside the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire, stepped forward and spoke with determination. Although he was also wearing a set of golden battle armor, it was obvious that his aura was much weaker compared to Yuan Qingdu. Yuan Qingdu would not even bother to attack him. The remaining generals on Tianlong city looked down at the great Xia dynasty army below with a hint of anger after hearing this general's words. However, their thoughts were similar at this moment. They all want to go down and fight the great Xia dynasty army to the death, because they were already extremely furious. Moreover, as generals commanding the battlefield, they knew that if this continued, the top experts of their Xiaoyao Empire would be wiped out. At that point, even if they occupied Tianlong city, it would be extremely difficult to defend the entire Tianlong city. After all, if their side's top experts were annihilated, what power would they have left to resist the army below? Even if their numbers far exceeded the army below, they would still lack the strength to resist that army. Chapter 407. The elite forces of the Xiaoyao Empire are at a disadvantage. The Xiaoyao Empire Emperor's final decision. Other ministers also showed a complex expression in their eyes when they heard the general's words. Although at this time, they wanted to persuade their emperor not to open the city gates and fight the army below. But the current situation seemed very grim. If they continued to defend Tianlong city, their top-tier forces would be completely depleted. At that point, it would be difficult to resist the army below. After all, this time, in order to capture Chu Fan from this army, they had already dispatched more than half of the top-tier forces within the Xiaoyao Empire. It could even be said that the remaining top-tier forces on Tianlong city of the Xiaoyao Empire were fewer than this 1,000-man unit that had gone out. First, let's try to recall them. If we truly cannot recall them, Then we will open the city gates and fight to the death with the army outside." The emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire sighed silently after hearing the general's words, and then he made up his mind. He then waved his hand at a general beside him. And this general, upon hearing His Majesty's words, blew the horn. This horn represented the retreat of troops in their Xiaoyao Empire, meaning that the 1,000-man unit below could now retreat upon hearing their horn. The 1,000-man unit below naturally heard the horn sounded by their empire. Thus, many people began to give up resistance and rushed towards Tianlong City of the Xiaoyao Empire. At this moment, they circulated their movement techniques to the extreme, and each person was like a flash of lightning, heading towards Tianlong City of the Xiaoyao Empire. But how could Guan Yu and the others let them escape? The new generation of 5 tiger generals directly transformed into 5 rays of light, rushing ahead of these experts from the Xiaoyao Empire. Then they directly blocked these generals of the Xiaoyao Empire who planned to retreat. The 5 of them were originally Saint King realm experts, so it was very easy to block these generals of the Xiaoyao Empire. At this moment, these generals of the Xiaoyao Empire were extremely angry when they saw the 5 people blocking their path, so another great battle unfolded. And the great Xia Dynasty army behind them kept chasing in their direction. While Guan Yu and the others were still fighting fiercely, the battle in the sky also became more intense. Yuan Xingdu's phoenix-winged, gold-plated halberd seemed capable of splitting the entire world open as it directly struck the ancestor at the perfected Saint King realm of the Xiaoyao Empire in front of him. The terrifying power directly sent this ancestor at the perfected Saint King realm of the Xiaoyao Empire flying to the ground. His body, like a cannonball, directly smashed onto the earth below. Instantly, a deep pit was left on the ground. And this fierce collision also caused the entire Tianlong City of the Xiaoyao Empire to shake, although this shaking was not that intense. But this was the entire Tianlong City. The entire Tianlong City shook. From this, one could see how powerful the impact of this old ancestor of the Xiaoyao Empire colliding with the ground was. And Yuan Xingdu, like a golden meteor, rushed down from the sky. The phoenix-winged, gold-plated halberd in his hand continued to emit terrifying chi. Then, he plunged into the deep pit. And within the deep pit, golden light continued to emanate. Clearly, Yuan Xingdu's chi and blood power had completely filled the entire deep pit. Of course, in addition to these golden lights, wisps of purple chi could also be seen constantly permeating. These purple chi carried lightning. While Yuan Xingdu was unaware of the situation, another old ancestor at the late Saint King stage of the Xiaoyao Empire was also directly sent flying by Pei Yuanqing's terrifying power. Then his body, like a cannonball, directly smashed into the city wall of Tianlong City. Instantly, a section of Tianlong City's city wall collapsed, and this section of has even created a huge gap in Tianlong City's city wall, making Tianlong City begin to look less perfect. And many soldiers inside this collapsed city wall were also directly crushed to death by this old ancestor of the Xiaoyao Empire. At this moment, Pei Yuanqing was still continuously attacking the several old ancestors of the Xiaoyao Empire opposite him. As he fought more and more fiercely, he instantly became the demon in the hearts of these old ancestors of the Xiaoyao Empire. At the same time, Luo Cheng also severed an arm of an old ancestor of the Xiaoyao Empire. This arm of the old ancestor of the Xiaoyao Empire fell directly onto the city wall of Tianlong City, as if it were a heaven and earth treasure falling from the sky. Instantly, the city wall of Tianlong City was filled with the chi of Saint King realm. At the same time, the blood emanating from this arm continued to corrode the city wall of Tianlong City. Dianwei and the other were also suppressing the Saint King level experts of the Xiaoyao Empire. The entire battlefield instantly made the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire's face extremely grim, because at this time, he found that all the experts of their Xiaoyao Empire had fallen into a disadvantage. Even the experts of their Xiaoyao Empire were at risk of falling at any time. Even that old ancestor at the perfected Saint King realm of the Xiaoyao Empire, at this time, it was unknown what his situation was. After all, they could not ascertain the situation within the deep pit. And at this moment, it seemed as if the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire had also made a certain decision in his heart. He stared intently at the great Xia Dynasty army below. At this moment, he wished he could directly annihilate all the great Xia Dynasty army below. Order to open the city gates. The entire army will attack. Even if my Xiaoyao Empire is annihilated today, we must completely annihilate the army outside. Then, with fierce eyes, he gave orders to the several generals beside him. And his order also represented the final resistance of the Xiaoyao Empire. Your subordinate general obeys. Upon hearing His Majesty's words, this general of the Xiaoyao Empire also showed a look of determination in his eyes, and then he looked fiercely at the great Xia dynasty army below. Then he began to command the army around him. The ministers of the Xiaoyao Empire knew they could not stop their emperor, so they all sighed and then looked at the army below with death chi in their eyes. In fact, when the Saint King level experts of Xiaoyao Empire began to slowly fall into a disadvantage, they had already realized this point. Although their army outnumbered the army below, the final outcome of this great battle depended on the battle between the top-tier experts. Therefore, from the very beginning, their Xiaoyao Empire had already fallen into a disadvantage. Chapter 408 The Army of the Free and Unfettered Empire has come out in full force. On the eve of a clash between the two armies, it could be said that what the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire was currently thinking was to exhaust all his strength to destroy the army outside. As for whether the Xiaoyao Empire would be destroyed afterward, the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire had no thoughts about it whatsoever. After all, if all the Saint King level experts on their side fell, the Xiaoyao Empire would become an empty shell, and at that point, for the Xiaoyao Empire to avoid destruction would simply be wishful thinking. This was why the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire chose to engage in an all-out battle with the army outside. By truly engaging in an all-out battle with the army outside, perhaps there was still a chance of victory, but if they waited until all the Saint King level experts on their side had fallen, then they would ultimately have no chance whatsoever to resist the army outside. Following the orders issued by the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire, the retreat bugle that had just sounded now rang out once more. However, the bugle sounded by the Xiaoyao Empire this time was not the call for retreat, but the call for an all-out attack. The bugle call for the attack echoed throughout the entire Tianlong city, and even the plains outside resonated continuously. At this moment, the massive city gate of Tianlong City slowly opened from above. The gate of Tianlong City was originally several hundred meters high, and its width reached an astonishing 1,000 meters, so the army of Tianlong City exiting from inside did not experience any congestion. As the gate of Tianlong City opened, the armies of the Xiaoyao Empire inside Tianlong City slowly began to march outward. A chilling, murderous aura permeated their bodies. Furthermore, the cultivation of the troops leading this army had all reached the Grotto Heaven realm. This was the secret army of Tianlong City, and the most elite army of the entire Xiaoyao Empire. Their number was only 100,000, but they were the army that had once swept across the entire Xiaoyao Empire. Yet, such an army could only be considered an ordinary force within the Great Xia dynasty outside, because every soldier among the million Great Xia dynasty troops outside had already reached the Grotto Heaven realm. Behind this elite army were the other forces of the Xiaoyao Empire. Their strength was not as formidable as the leading army, but their eyes were filled with a disregard for death. At this moment, Chu Fan, who was among the ranks of the Great Xia dynasty, naturally saw the main gate of Tianlong City slowly opening. In fact, from a moment the Saint King level old ancestor of the Xiaoyao Empire began to lose ground, Chu Fan and his people had already guessed the Xiaoyao Empire's final choice. From that point on, the Xiaoyao Empire only had two options: either open the city gates and fight them to the death, or continue to wait for death inside Tianlong City. Of course, there was a final option, which was to surrender to their Great Xia dynasty. But Chu Fan guessed that the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire would absolutely not choose to surrender to their Great Xia dynasty so easily. It seems the Xiaoyao Empire intends to fight us to the death. Chu Fan looked at the soldiers continuously pouring out of Tianlong City, his face full of emotion. At the same time, looking at the massive city gate of Tianlong City, Chu Fan felt a powerful sense of shock. One must know that in the world he belonged to in his previous life, the largest city gate was only a few dozen meters high, and its width could reach at most a few dozen meters. Yet now, the gate of Tianlong City had reached the level of such a behemoth. As expected, it was worthy of being a city gate from Xuanhuan world novel. Of course, if the gate of Tianlong City were not so massive, how could it be worthy of the behemoth that is Tianlong City? However, Tianlong City did not look as dazzling now as it did moments before, because a huge gap had appeared on the city wall of Tianlong City. This gap was caused by the collision of the Saint King level old ancestor of Tianlong City just now. Esteemed sovereign, as long as we deal with the army in front of us, we can directly take over the entire Xiaoyao Empire without obstruction. After all, their strongest forces are all here. Once we eliminate this army, there will be nothing left in the Xiaoyao Empire to stop us. At this moment, a hint of battle intent appeared in Chen Jibao's eyes, though excitement was the predominant emotion. Although the strength of the Great Xia dynasty had been continuously improving over the years, due to Chu Fan's wishes, they had not waged war against other nations, so the territory of the Great Xia dynasty was still only the eastern region. Perhaps for the cultivators of the eastern region, the territory of the Great Xia dynasty having unified the entire eastern region, was already vast. But for them, the territory of the Great Xia Dynasty was still too small. Only by bringing the entire world under the Great Xia Dynasty's control could it be considered true unification. After all, in the minds of Chen Zhibao and his peers, only genuine unification constituted a complete nation. General Chen, how long will it take to capture Tianlong City? Guo Jiao looked at Chen Zhibao beside him with curiosity, wanting to see how long it would take Chen Zhibao to capture Tianlong City. Half a day will be enough. Chen Zhibao looked at Tianlong City ahead with confidence. For him, capturing Tianlong City would not take much time, especially since the armies inside Tianlong City were now planning to come out and fight them on the plains. Therefore, he was even more confident about capturing Tianlong City now. Since Zhibao is so confident, then begin your performance. Chu Fan did not refute Chen Zhibao's words. Instead, he smiled and then waved his hand at him. After receiving Chu Fan's command, Chen Zhibao immediately rode his warhorse forward, and simultaneously, the Great Xia Dynasty army began to mobilize according to Chen Zhibao's orders. They then continuously approached the direction of Tianlong City. As for Tianlong City at this time, the outside was already filled with several million troops of the Xiaoyao Empire. Their eyes were filled with a disregard for death, and the qi radiating from their bodies made everyone feel their scalps tingle. If an ordinary imperial dynasty saw such a force here, they probably wouldn't even have the courage to fight. However, the army of the Great Xia Dynasty looked upon this force with abundant battle intent. Furthermore, under the leadership of Chen Zhibao, they continuously closed in on the several million troops of the Xiaoyao Empire. In an instant, the two armies faced each other on the plain below. The distance between the two armies was now only a few miles, a distance that meant nothing to them. Is the true decisive battle finally about to begin? The emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire looked at the two armies about to collide below, his eyes filled with determination. Meanwhile, the several ministers of the Xiaoyao Empire beside him looked at the army below with worried expressions. At this moment, they could only place all their hopes on this army. Only if this army won would they have a chance to survive. Of course, this was the only way to survive besides surrendering. Chapter 409, The Successive Falls of the Holy Kings of the Carefree Empire. The Fall of the Holy King Perfection Ancestor. Under the gaze of the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire and his numerous ministers, the Xiaoyao Empire's army below drew closer and closer to the Great Xia Dynasty's army. Then, the two great armies collided, and the moment they crashed together, the entire earth shook violently. It was as if the entire world was experiencing a fierce tremor, and these two armies began to slaughter each other. Although the Great Xia Dynasty's army was outnumbered by the Xiaoyao Empire's army, the Great Xia Dynasty's army below surpassed the Xiaoyao Empire's army in strength. Therefore, as the great battle unfolded, the Xiaoyao Empire's army began to fall rapidly, and its numbers also started to dwindle. In just the time of one collision, the Xiaoyao Empire's army lost tens of thousands of soldiers. And this was just one collision. As time continued to pass, the Xiaoyao Empire's army also began to fall gradually. In less than the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, the Xiaoyao Empire's army had lost hundreds of thousands of soldiers. Meanwhile, the Great Xia Dynasty's army, even more terrifyingly, charged towards the Xiaoyao Empire's army. It could be said that if such a great battle continued, the Xiaoyao Empire would definitely lose. Seeing this scene, the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire's face grew increasingly grim. He had not expected the Great Xia Dynasty's army to be so terrifyingly strong. Their Xiaoyao Empire's army appeared so weak and vulnerable in front of the Great Xia Dynasty's army. One could even say that their Xiaoyao Empire's army couldn't even stop the Great Xia Dynasty's army's advance. And the reality was exactly as the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire had seen it. At this moment, Chen Zhibao was leading his army, constantly charging towards Tianlong City. Behind him, the Great Xia Dynasty's army was continuously slaughtering the surrounding Xiaoyao Empire's army. The Xiaoyao Empire's army was now in a passive state, with many soldiers beginning to defend themselves. Because at this moment, they discovered that the army in front of them was like a devil. Even if they gave their all, they might not be able to withstand the army in front of them. Instantly, the Xiaoyao Empire's army's morale began to slowly crumble. At the same time, many people's eyes showed expressions of panic and confusion. After all, such a situation had far exceeded their imagination. Moreover, the strength of the Xiaoyao Empire's army was constantly diminishing. In contrast, the Great Xia Dynasty's army was growing increasingly powerful, and the qi emanating from them had reached its peak. Especially with Guan Yu and others leading the charge, the Great Xia Dynasty's army's strength was even more terrifying. At this moment, Chu Fan, watching this scene from the rear, couldn't help but curve his lips into a smile. This century-long great battle was a crushing victory for him. Therefore, it wouldn't take long for the Xiaoyao Empire to fall. One could even say that if the great Xia dynasty's army continued to push forward like this, then the Xiaoyao Empire's army in front would suffer immensely. In fact, it wouldn't take long before this Xiaoyao Empire's army in front would completely vanish from the annals of history. At this moment, he was not far from taking over the entire northern region. As long as he took down the Xiaoyao Empire in front of him, then half of the northern region's territory would already be in his hands. Furthermore, the great Xia dynasty's army was also continuously encroaching on the other empire, so it could be said that after dealing with these two great empires, only the Overlord Blade sect would remain. At this time, in addition to the great battle between the two armies below, the Saint King level great battle was also extremely terrifying. However, in the Saint King level great battle at this moment, the great Xia dynasty side had always held the upper hand. At the same time, the old ancestors of the Xiaoyao Empire at the Saint King level looked at the great battle between the two armies below, their eyes filled with helplessness. Of course, what made them even more helpless was that their opponents far surpassed them. Luo Cheng had just cut off the arm of a Saint King from the Xiaoyao Empire, and now, relying on the silver spear in his hand, he had directly slain an old ancestor of the Xiaoyao Empire at the Saint King level. After dealing with this old ancestor at the Saint King level, Luo Cheng then turned his gaze to the other Saint Kings of the Xiaoyao Empire. However, the situation of these Saint Kings of the small empire was not very good right now. Dianwei and Su Chu were like madmen, constantly attacking the Saint Kings of the Xiaoyao Empire in front of them. Their physical body strength was extremely formidable, so the attacks of the Xiaoyao Empire's Saint Kings on them were like nothing. However, their attacks on the Xiaoyao Empire's Saint Kings caused them to suffer severe injuries. Now, the two of them were in a situation where if others hit them, they were fine, but if they hit others, it would lead to severe injury or even death. That is to say, the two of them could miss countless times, but their opponents could not miss. Otherwise, these Saint Kings of the Xiaoyao Empire would only be able to meet the King of Hell. Meanwhile, Pei Yuanqing was even more ferocious, constantly striking the Saint Kings of the Xiaoyao Empire with the iron hammer in his hand. In just a short while, Pei Yuanqing had already slain two Saint Kings of the Xiaoyao Empire. That is to say, within this short period, 3 Saint King level experts from the Xiaoyao Empire had fallen. At this moment, Yuan Qingdu also slowly walked out of the deep pit, holding a head in his hand. Clearly, he had already dealt with the ancestor at the perfected Saint King realm of the Xiaoyao Empire. For a moment, everyone on the entire battlefield focused their gaze on Yuan Qingdu. Of course, more people's gazes were focused on the head in Yuan Qingdu's hand. Looking at the fierce Yuan Qingdu, the generals of the Xiaoyao Empire couldn't help but feel a chill in their hearts. And at the same time, their eyes showed shock and retreat. After all, no one wanted to fight with such a demon god. Of course, even if they wanted to fight Yuan Qingdu, they were not qualified. After all, Yuan Qingdu's strength had far exceeded their imagination. At this moment, the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire on the city wall had even more trembling in his eyes. He had not expected his own ancestor at the perfected Saint King realm to fall so easily, which instantly made him feel angry and helpless. If his old ancestor had not fallen, this great battle might still have had a turning point. But now that his ancestor at the perfected Saint King realm had fallen, it meant that this great battle had completely lost its turning point. At the same time, the entire Xiaoyao Empire might completely become the territory of the army below today. Thinking of this, a terrifying qi emanated from the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire. At this moment, although he was only at the entering Saint realm, his qi had already reached the Saint King realm. Chapter 410, The Empire's Luck Enhances Strength. The meeting between the emperor of the free and unfettered empire and Chu Fan. More importantly, the aura around him was constantly rising, while a golden radiance continuously enveloped and spun around him. Furthermore, within this golden radiance, a golden vermilion bird could be seen, and the aura of the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire was continuously transmitted by this golden vermilion bird. This was why his aura continued to rise, but it could be seen that following the rise in the aura of the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire, black thunderbolts also appeared above the Xiaoyao Empire, and these black thunderbolts were constantly swirling, as if world-destroying lightning could descend at any moment. And the final cultivation level of this emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire stopped at late Saint King. At this moment, the golden streams of qi flowing around him completely formed a golden armor, and a golden war spear appeared in his hand. This made him look heroic and extraordinary. Chu Fan, who was outside the battlefield below, naturally saw this scene, and he wore a humorous smile as he looked at the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire on the Tianlong city wall, using the empire's luck to forcibly elevate his strength to late Saint King. It seems the Xiaoyao Empire has also mastered the empire's luck. But even so, what difference does it make? Chu Fan grew curious about this emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire. He then slowly rode the qilin beneath him and leisurely walked toward the center of the battlefield. As for the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire, he naturally saw Chu Fan approaching while riding the qilin. His gaze instantly locked onto Chu Fan's direction, and at the same time, a terrifying battle intent emanated from him. Are you the emperor of the great Xia dynasty? I wonder what level your strength has reached. The emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire then muttered toward Chu Fan's direction. The golden aura around him grew even more terrifying, as if the entire world was enveloped within it. Moreover, the battle intent in his eyes instantly filled the entire heaven and earth. Following this, he leaped directly from above Tianlong City, like a golden beam of light. The golden war spear in his hand was continuously radiating golden light. The golden qi and blood energy radiating from his body instantly sent the surrounding soldiers flying away. This prevented the surrounding soldiers from approaching him. Soldiers were only present hundreds of meters away from him. His immediate surroundings were in a state of vacuum. Meanwhile, Chu Fan slowly rode the qilin and appeared in the center of the battlefield. There are no soldiers around him either, making him look even more heroic and extraordinary. Of course, the golden radiance around him instantly made the surrounding heaven and earth dim. It was as if he alone was the protagonist of this world. Naturally, everyone else also noticed Chu Fan and the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire. Thus, everyone's gaze turned toward the two men. Although the Xiaoyao Empire's army did not know Chu Fan's identity, based on the extraordinary aura surrounding him and his current appearance, they could sense that Chu Fan's status was definitely not simple. As Chu Fan slowly arrived at the center of the battlefield, the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire facing him also raised his head and met Chu Fan's gaze. This was the first meeting between the emperor of the great Xia dynasty and the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire. At the same time, the two men's gazes continuously clashed in the air. The surrounding auras also began to surge because of the two of them. Emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire, Long Zhantian. The emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire spoke first to Chu Fan, and his voice instantly spread throughout the entire battlefield. This allowed everyone on the battlefield to hear his voice. Imperial Lord of the great Xia dynasty, Chu Fan. Chu Fan slowly raised his head, looked at the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire before him, and spoke softly to the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire. His voice naturally also spread across the entire battlefield, carrying a mix of gentleness and dominance. Yet this blend of gentleness and dominance was distinctly different from the voice of the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire. Imperial Lord of the great Xia dynasty, how about we set a wager? After hearing Chu Fan's words, Long Zhantian looked at Chu Fan and spoke slowly, though a hint of worry flashed in his eyes, clearly concerned that Chu Fan might reject his request. What kind of wager? Tell me about it. Chu Fan did not immediately reject Long Zhantian's proposal. Instead, he looked at Long Zhantian curiously and inquired. After speaking, he calmly looked at Long Zhantian before him. Today, you and I shall fight. If I lose, I will hand over the entire Xiaoyao Empire. But if you lose, I will spare your life, and I hope you will withdraw your troops from the Xiaoyao Empire. Long Zhantian spoke earnestly after hearing Chu Fan's words, but as he reached this point, his face showed a confident expression. Clearly, defeating Chu Fan seemed very easy for him. Of course, this was merely his internal thought. As for whether he could actually defeat Chu Fan, that was his own challenge. After hearing Long Zhantian's words, everyone's gaze fell upon Chu Fan. They also wanted to see if Chu Fan would agree to Long Zhantian's request, and if Chu Fan did agree, whether he could defeat Long Zhantian, or, conversely, if Long Zhantian could defeat Chu Fan. If I defeat you, does that mean the entire Xiaoyao Empire will surrender to my great Xia dynasty? After hearing Long Zhantian's words, Chu Fan had more or less understood Long Zhantian's intention. He slowly took a step forward and then questioned Long Zhantian before him. Of course, his main purpose was to confirm the matter. As Chu Fan's words fell, the soldiers present all turned their gazes toward Long Zhantian. Even the soldiers and generals of the Xiaoyao Empire showed expressions of worry. If their imperial lord lost, would they truly all have to surrender to the great Xia dynasty before them? However, when they glanced at the great Xia dynasty's army, they grew worried again, because if the battle continued, the Xiaoyao Empire's army would definitely suffer heavy casualties once more. It could even be said that the experts within their army would find it difficult to survive. After hearing Chu Fan's words, Long Zhantian's eyes held a hint of helplessness and loneliness. That is correct. As long as you can defeat me, my Xiaoyao Empire will fully surrender to the great Xia dynasty, including these soldiers standing before us. He then directly admitted to the matter, because if he were defeated, the Xiaoyao Empire would have no chance left. Chapter 411 A Battle Between Kings. Vermilion Bird versus Phoenix. Moreover, if he were to lose, then their Xiaoyao Empire surrendering to the Great Xia Dynasty might be the best option. The Xiaoyao Empire's army and generals felt their hearts sink to rock bottom after hearing their Your Majesty's words. However, at this moment, their eyes were filled with anticipation as they looked at their Your Majesty, clearly still having great expectations for him. Upon hearing the words of the Xiaoyao Empire's emperor, Chu Fan nodded to Long Zhantian, clearly agreeing to his proposal. After all, if he could successfully resolve this great battle, then what was the harm in fighting one? And after seeing Chu Fan agree, the great battle between the Xiaoyao Empire and the Great Xia Dynasty also ceased. At the same time, everyone looked at Long Zhantian and Chu Fan with expectant eyes, while the two of them exuded terrifying qi. Although Chu Fan did not borrow the power of luck, his cultivation had already reached the Saint King consummation realm. Therefore, at this moment, he naturally did not fear Long Zhantian, the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire. What's more, Chu Fan could originally borrow the power of the Great Xia Dynasty's luck, and if he did, his cultivation would definitely be able to advance to the Great Saint realm. At that time, who would be his opponent? And as the two of them prepared themselves, the qi of Chu Fan and the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire also began to slowly rise. The Saint King realm qi on the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire was originally due to him relying on his own luck to raise his realm to the Saint King realm. Therefore, he naturally could not drag out this great battle with Chu Fan. If he kept dragging it out with Chu Fan, then the Xiaoyao Empire's luck would be exhausted by him. At that time, even if he won this great battle, the Xiaoyao Empire would slowly decline. And Chu Fan naturally also wanted to end this battle quickly. So his golden long spear in his hand directly thrust out. Similarly, the golden long spear in the hand of the Xiaoyao Empire's emperor also thrust directly towards him. The next second, the two golden long spears collided. The moment they collided, a terrifying, deep crack instantly appeared beneath their feet. And the sound of their weapons colliding also produced a huge fluctuation, instantly sending the surrounding army flying out. Seeing this, the surrounding army quickly left this place of conflict. As for the golden long spear in Chu Fan's hand, it was emitting a golden light at this moment, as if mocking the golden long spear in the hand of the Xiaoyao Empire's emperor. The golden long spear in the Xiaoyao Empire's hand emitted a crimson gold light. There was some difference between this and the pure golden qi emitted by Chu Fan. And as the power emanating from Chu Fan became stronger, the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire couldn't help but retreat a few steps. And with every step he retreated, a huge pit would appear under his feet, and at the same time, a huge crack would also appear. This was his terrifying strength. And of course, the most important thing was that he channeled all the power he received into the earth beneath his feet. And just at this moment, a golden phoenix instantly appeared on Chu Fan. This golden phoenix emerged from behind Chu Fan. Then it instantly appeared above Chu Fan's head, where it continuously flapped its wings, and a terrifying fiery qi instantly swept across the entire battlefield, making the entire battlefield begin to become hot and dry. At the same time, the aura of sacred inviolability emanating from this golden phoenix was completely imprinted in everyone's minds. Seeing this scene, the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire gritted his teeth and instantly activated the national luck of the Xiaoyao Empire. Subsequently, a fiery red great bird also appeared behind him, and this fiery red great bird was constantly changing. Soon, a vermilion bird emitting golden light appeared behind him, but the golden light emanating from this vermilion bird was very different from the golden light emanating from Chu Fan. That was because the flames on this vermilion bird were constantly spreading this golden qi, making this vermilion bird appear somewhat crimson gold. With the appearance of this vermilion bird, the surrounding environment became even hotter. It was as if, besides the sun in the sky, there were two more suns on the ground below. However, this was also normal, as the vermilion bird and the phoenix were originally representatives of fire. Therefore, the fiery qi emanating from the vermilion bird and the phoenix naturally could rival the sun in the sky. Moreover, the representative of the sun was the three-legged golden crow, and the vermilion bird and the phoenix were divine beasts that could be compared to the golden crow. Therefore, the purity of the fiery qi they emitted could rival that of the sun. After the two divine beasts appeared, they also directly charged at each other. The next second, a golden phoenix and a crimson gold vermilion bird were seen constantly colliding and tearing at each other in the sky. And Chu Fan and the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire continuously clashed with the long spears in their hands. Every collision of their long spears produced a violent sound. If an ordinary cultivator in the late Saint King stage were in front of Chu Fan, then he would probably have already been defeated. However, the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire before him was blessed with luck. The entire nation's luck was upon him, so although he was only in the late Saint King stage now, his own strength was already not inferior to that of an ordinary Great Saint realm cultivator, which is why those powerful individuals rarely engaged in great battles with the emperor of a nation. After all, the emperor of this nation not only controlled this nation, but also controlled its national luck. This was a bug in novels. Especially the strength of emperors who possessed the human emperor fate was even more terrifying. They could even fight across a major realm. And as the great battle in the sky continuously collided, the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire also gradually began to fall into a disadvantage at this moment. Although his strength was already not inferior to that of an ordinary Great Saint realm expert, he was facing Chu Fan, who also possessed national luck. Of course, Chu Fan did not mobilize the national luck at this moment. Otherwise, this emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire would have already been defeated. But even so, Chu Fan, who possessed the innate Dao Body and human emperor fate, naturally had strength far exceeding cultivators of the same realm. So even when facing the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire, who had raised his cultivation with national luck, Chu Fan still held the upper hand. He even continuously injured this emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire with the golden long spear in his hand. And the golden chi and blood power on the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire could not stop the golden long spear in Chu Fan's hand, instantly causing many scars to appear on the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire. Chapter 4:12 The Final Battle, integrated with the fate of the nation. After sensing the injuries within his body, the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire's gaze instantly became solemn. Following this, he was seen raising his head and glancing at Chu Fan. In an instant, his entire demeanor suggested he had made some kind of firm decision. A crimson-red flame flowed within his body, and this flame was interspersed with golden light. This made him appear even more dazzling. At the same time, the golden battle spear in his hand also began to slowly change. The originally golden battle spear transformed into a crimson gold battle spear under the burning of the crimson-red flame. Simultaneously, his hair began to turn a streak of crimson red. His entire presence underwent a massive change. Following this, he was seen fiercely thrusting his spear toward Chu Fan. The power of this strike had far surpassed the attacks of ordinary cultivators in the Saint King realm. Everyone's gaze converged upon Chu Fan. They wanted to see how Chu Fan intended to resist this blow. At this moment, Chu Fan's face was completely expressionless. Instead, he calmly wielded the golden battle spear in his hand. A terrifying chi instantly radiated from his body. He himself seemed like a sun hanging in the sky. This caused everyone present to feel an intense heat. Simultaneously, a golden barrier appeared around him, enveloping him within it. The attack from the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire struck directly onto this golden barrier. However, this terrifying attack only caused a ripple in the golden light. Nothing else could even break through this golden light. Meanwhile, the golden battle spear in Chu Fan's hand flew out directly, like a meteor, shooting toward the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire. Sensing this terrifying blow, the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire quickly used the crimson gold battle spear in his hand to block it. But how could he easily withstand such terrifying power? The terrifying force was seen directly, sending the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire flying. He crashed down onto the ground below like a meteor. Instantly, a deep crater appeared in the earth below. The emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire lay quietly within the crater, and the chi surrounding his body began to slowly diminish. Clearly, this strike had caused him significant damage. Of course, this was not Chu Fan's true strength. When the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire sensed the diminishing power within his body, his eyes were filled with determination. Following this, he was seen gently patting the ground with his palm, and then he once again transformed into a streak of crimson gold light and flew into the sky. At the same time, an imperial seal from his embrace slowly flew above his head. This imperial seal continuously emitted golden light, and this golden light ceaselessly injected itself into the body of the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire. In just a moment, a terrifying and ferocious expression appeared on the face of the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire. Concurrently, numerous bolts of thunder appeared in the sky above the Xiaoyao Empire, seemingly intent on destroying the entire Xiaoyao Empire. However, just as these bolts of thunder were about to fall, the crimson gold vermilion bird in the sky directly swallowed them completely. This caused the thunder in the sky to subside. At this moment, the chi of the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire had completely ascended to the Saint King consummation realm. At this point, the imperial seal above his head lost its radiance and instantly became an ordinary item. This time, the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire had mobilized all the national destiny of the Xiaoyao Empire. Even if the Xiaoyao Empire won this great battle, the national destiny of the Xiaoyao Empire would require at least 100 years to recover. It might even take more than 100 years. Looking at the imperial seal in his hand that had already lost its luster, the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire's face held a mix of helplessness and determination. Following this, he was seen slowly turning his gaze toward Chu Fan. After glancing at Chu Fan, he instantly transformed into a streak of crimson gold light and merged with the crimson gold vermilion bird in the sky. He now intended to merge with the national destiny and fight one final battle against Chu Fan. Chu Fan was also somewhat surprised by this scene. He had not expected this to be the final choice of the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire. However, at this moment, he was not worried about the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire. Instead, he calmly glanced at the golden phoenix above him. At this time, this golden phoenix also emitted terrifying battle intent. It seemed to be reminding Chu Fan that he could merge with it. Chu Fan naturally sensed the golden phoenix's battle intent, so he was seen instantly transforming into a streak of golden light, and his entire being immediately merged with the golden phoenix in the sky. As Chu Fan merged with the golden phoenix, the entire sky instantly seemed to be affected by a terrifying great power that altered the heavens. Simultaneously, the scorching chi in the sky instantly caused the surroundings to become intensely hot. The armies below were continuously retreating at this time, as this scorching power made them feel suffocated. If they did not retreat in time, they might perish completely due to this scorching power. As for the generals of the two empires, they all looked toward the vermilion bird and the phoenix in the sky, because they all knew that the outcome of this great battle would be completely revealed now. Moreover, the great battle between the vermilion bird and the phoenix in the sky also represented the fate of the two nations. The armies on the side of the Great Xia dynasty believed that their sovereign could defeat the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire, while the armies on the side of the Xiaoyao Empire anticipated that their emperor could defeat the sovereign of the Great Xia dynasty. Amidst the anticipation of the two massive armies, the vermilion bird and the phoenix in the sky collided. The two divine beasts charged directly at each other, using the most primal methods. Simultaneously, the surrounding flames instantly caused the entire sky to ignite. In an instant, the entire sky was enveloped by two seas of flame. The brightest things within these two seas of flame were likely the golden phoenix and the crimson gold vermilion bird. At this moment, they were still continuously fighting fiercely within these two red seas. Moreover, the sun in the sky seemed to be granting them power at this time. This caused the two seas of flame in the sky to burn ever more fiercely, consuming even the surrounding spiritual chi. But for the vermilion bird and the phoenix in the sky, the searing heat in the air did not affect their great battle. The great battle between the vermilion bird and the phoenix continued ceaselessly, and these two rays of light continuously intertwined like two meteors flying through the sky. Chapter 413, the Emperor of the Carefree Empire is defeated. The nation's fate is returned, and life and death cease. The collision between the two also completely dissipated the thunderclouds in the sky. At the same time, these two seas of fire were continuously spreading. Even those battles of the Saint King level in the sky had to stop at this moment, because the power generated by the great battle between the two had already far surpassed the Saint King realm. Therefore, even though they had achieved a breakthrough to the Saint King realm, under the oppressive chi of the two individuals' great battle, they could only submit. At this time, this golden phoenix and the crimson gold vermilion bird seemed like the sovereigns of heaven and earth, suppressing the entire world. As for the two individuals, they continuously fought in the sky. After the entire sky was dyed into a sea of fire by the vermilion bird and the phoenix. The vermilion bird was ultimately slightly weaker. He was directly swatted away by the phoenix, and his body fell straight down from the sky. When his body fell halfway, the true form of the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire also appeared. At this moment, his face was pale, blood hung from the corner of his mouth, and he fell weakly from the sky. However, it could be seen that the face of this emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire carried a hint of relief. Although he lost this great battle, and the Xiaoyao Empire would have to completely submit to the Great Xia dynasty, he had already exhausted all his strength in this great battle, even mobilizing the entire national destiny value of the Xiaoyao Empire. Therefore, even if he lost this great battle, he felt it was worth it. On the other side, the golden phoenix also transformed back into Chu Fan's original body. He gazed serenely at the falling emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire. He himself turned into a golden ray of light, standing in the sky, his eyes containing unprecedented tranquility. The emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire fell very quickly. In just the span of a breath, his body had already crashed onto the ground. Instantly, he created a deep pit in the ground, and this emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire seemed to be embedded in the deep pit. His entire being stared at the sky with dead silence in his eyes. Even if he could mobilize the national destiny value of the Xiaoyao Empire again at this moment, he did not plan to continue fighting Chu Fan, because after this battle, he had completely realized the gap between himself and Chu Fan. Thinking of this, the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire immediately struck his own chest with his palm. This strike exhausted all his remaining strength. The moment he struck his chest with his palm, streaks of crimson gold light burst forth from his body, and these crimson gold rays continuously flew toward the sky. When these crimson gold rays flew into the sky, they condensed into a crimson gold vermilion bird. This crimson gold vermilion bird glanced reluctantly at the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire. Subsequently, this crimson gold vermilion bird transformed into streaks of crimson gold chi and dissipated between heaven and earth. Following the dissipation of this crimson gold vermilion bird between heaven and earth, the surrounding environment also became gentler. At the same time, the so-called thunder in the sky completely disappeared. The emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire returned all the national destiny value within his body to the empire at the very last moment. As the national destiny value of the Xiaoyao Empire was returned to the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire slowly closed his eyes. The qi around him began to slowly dissipate, and finally, there was no trace of life left in him. When the army and the generals of the Xiaoyao Empire saw this scene, they silently lowered their heads toward the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire. At this moment, they naturally knew what had happened, and they also knew that their Majesty had fought the sovereign of the Great Xia dynasty in the sky for their sake. Although their Majesty lost this battle, even so, they did not hold the slightest grudge against him. As for Chu Fan, upon seeing this scene, he slowly walked toward the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire, and then lightly tapped his finger. The imperial seal from the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire's embrace appeared in his hand. At this moment, the imperial seal was emitting streaks of crimson gold Dao light. Originally, it had been dull and lusterless, but the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire had injected the last of his national destiny value back into the imperial seal. Therefore, it could now be considered the legacy item of the Xiaoyao Empire. As this imperial seal fell into Chu Fan's hand, the national destiny value on Chu Fan's body began to devour the national destiny value on the imperial seal before him. And the national destiny value of the Great Xia dynasty began to increase at this moment, growing at a speed that far exceeded any other time. It could even be said that the national destiny value of the Great Xia dynasty had now reached a level that ordinary empires would find difficult to match. It must be noted that although the Great Xia dynasty was an imperial dynasty established by unifying the entire eastern region, its national destiny value was still far inferior compared to ordinary empires. After all, among the empires in the central region, the experts within them had already reached terrifying levels. Moreover, to establish an empire in the central region, one must possess at least a quasi-emperor level expert. Otherwise, the established nation can only be called an imperial dynasty. Although the empires of the northern region cannot compare to the empires of the central region, their national destiny value is also not poor. After all the national destiny value of the Xiaoyao Empire was transferred to the Great Xia dynasty, the national destiny value of the Xiaoyao Empire began to cheer enthusiastically for Chu Fan. At this moment, the national destiny value of the Xiaoyao Empire was extremely happy, just like a child. Following the successful transfer of the Xiaoyao Empire's national destiny value to the Great Xia dynasty, the natural phenomena marking the downfall of the Saint King level expert in the sky also appeared. Initially, due to the suppression of the national destiny value, the natural phenomena marking the downfall of the Saint King level expert had not appeared, but now this national destiny value was no longer suppressing them. Therefore, the natural phenomena in the sky naturally reappeared. A blood-red natural phenomenon instantly enveloped the entire Xiaoyao Empire. At this moment, all the cultivators of the Xiaoyao Empire raised their heads to look at the blood-red natural phenomenon in the sky. Many people looked toward the direction of Tianlong City, because they all knew that the Xiaoyao Empire's army was currently engaged in the final battle against the Great Xia dynasty's army at Tianlong City. Therefore, the natural phenomena marking the downfall of these Saint King level expert naturally originated from Tianlong City. At this time, many people began to worry, because if these fallen Saint King level expert belonged to their Xiaoyao Empire, then the entire Xiaoyao Empire would be defeated by this mysterious army. Chu Fan ignored the speculations of the Xiaoyao Empire's cultivators at this moment. He slowly approached Chen Jibao. Give him a proper burial. At the same time, it is time for you to incorporate the entire Tianlong City into the territory of my Great Xia dynasty. Subsequently, Chu Fan issued the order to Chen Jibao. The emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire before them still needed a proper burial. At the same time, Tianlong City should now completely surrender to their Great Xia dynasty. Chapter 414, The Benefits of National Fortune Growth and the Explosion of Spiritual Energy in Chang'an City. After the great battle between Chu Fan and the Emperor of Xiaoyao Empire ended, the generals and army of Xiaoyao Empire present could only reluctantly comply with their emperor's final wish. All the generals and soldiers laid down their weapons and surrendered directly to the Great Xia Dynasty. This was what Chu Fan hoped to see, so he returned to his qilin and quietly waited for Chen Jibao to conquer Tianlong City. As for the cultivators at the Saint King level and below, they also surrendered to the Great Xia Dynasty at this time. Since the Emperor of Xiaoyao Empire had already surrendered, then their surrender to the Great Xia Dynasty now would not be considered treason. Although Chu Fan looked down on them somewhat, he still accepted all these generals and Saint Kings who surrendered to their Great Xia Dynasty. After all the troops of Xiaoyao Empire surrendered, the army of Great Xia Dynasty easily entered Tianlong City. Upon entering Tianlong City, Chu Fan immediately gave an order to Chen Jibao to conquer the entire Xiaoyao Empire as quickly as possible. Although the Emperor of Xiaoyao Empire had surrendered to their Great Xia Dynasty, and even ordered all of Xiaoyao Empire's troops to surrender to their Great Xia Dynasty in the end. But now they had only taken over more than half of Xiaoyao Empire. The cities in the rear were unaware that their emperor had handed over the entire Xiaoyao Empire. That is why Chu Fan ordered Chen Jibao to conquer Xiaoyao Empire as quickly as possible. Chen Jibao was also very efficient. He quickly dispatched the armies from the Great Xia Dynasty, with each person leading several thousand troops towards all the cities of Xiaoyao Empire. The cultivation of Pei Yuanqing and others had already reached the Saint King realm, so they could deter an entire city of Xiaoyao Empire by themselves. Moreover, they also held the imperial edict of surrender from Xiaoyao Empire, just as Xiaoyao Empire completely became the territory of the Great Xia Dynasty. At this time, the Great Xia Dynasty in the eastern region was also undergoing drastic changes, especially Chang'an City, the capital of the Great Xia Dynasty at this moment. Because this was where the national fortune of the Great Xia Dynasty gathered, the spiritual qi in Chang'an City began to surge continuously, especially the spiritual qi in the imperial palace, which directly surged several times over. Chu Tianxiong, who was originally with his grandson, suddenly experienced a surge in his aura. Since having grandchildren, Chu Tianxiong had rarely cultivated, but due to the surge of spiritual qi in Chang'an City this time, his cultivation successfully broke through to the true king realm. The aura around Feng Shiran, who was beside him, also directly broke through a minor realm. The two looked at each other, their eyes filled with shock. As expected of the possessor of the human emperor fate, he conquered an empire in such a short time. Heavenly Secret Master, who was beside them, looked at the sky with a shocked expression. As the current successor of Tianji Pavilion, he naturally knew what had happened. That is why he was filled with a hint of shock at this moment, because this signified that the Great Xia Dynasty had conquered an empire at an extremely fast pace. During this period, although the spiritual qi in Chang'an City of the Great Xia Dynasty had been increasing, the rate of increase was not very fast. For Heavenly Secret Master, the current Pavilion Master of Tianji Pavilion, the rate of spiritual qi increase in the Great Xia Dynasty was still within his expectations. But this time, the surge in spiritual qi made him feel incredible. Senior, do you mean my son has conquered another empire? Chu Tianxiong naturally heard Heavenly Secret Master's words, so he asked Heavenly Secret Master with an incredulous expression. Chu Tianxiong had naturally heard of empires. After all, he knew that there were many Saint King level experts within empires, but he had not expected his son to conquer an empire so easily. That's right, the emperor has already conquered an empire, and according to the current rate of spiritual qi increase in Chang'an City, he probably won't take long to conquer the northern region. At that time, the spiritual qi of the entire eastern region will reach an even more terrifying state under the influence of the national fortune. Heavenly Secret Master nodded after hearing Chu Tianxiong's words, and at the same time, he was filled with emotion regarding the eastern region. Originally, the eastern region was the most backward place with the thinnest spiritual qi, where even true king realm cultivators were difficult to appear. But now, the spiritual qi in the eastern region can already support the appearance of entering saint-level cultivators, and as the spiritual qi continues to recover, the eastern region is believed to be able to produce Saint King realm cultivators in no time. Moreover, Chu Fan, who possesses the human emperor fate, placed the capital of the Great Xia Dynasty, Chang'an City, in the eastern region. Therefore, as long as the national fortune of the Great Xia Dynasty increases, the spiritual qi in Chang'an City will increase. At that time, the spiritual qi of the entire eastern region will also increase, and perhaps in not too long, the eastern region can rival the central region. One must know that with the increase of spiritual qi, the eastern region will only produce more powerful cultivators. Of course, this is not without drawbacks. The biggest drawback is that the territory of the eastern region is not large enough. Compared to other places, the territory of the eastern region is indeed quite small. However, no matter how small it is, it can still become a land of immortals in the future. At this time, although the two little ones did not understand the conversation between Heavenly Secret Master and Chu Tianxiong, they both believed this was the power of their father. In their eyes, Chu Fan was the most powerful. As the spiritual qi in Chang'an City continuously increased, the cultivation of the cultivators in Chang'an City also began to slowly grow. Moreover, the cultivation of those cultivators with lower cultivation directly surged. What's going on? Why did the spiritual qi in Chang'an City suddenly surge so much? Is it because of the emperor? Besides the emperor, who else has such great ability? I heard that the emperor has already conquered several imperial dynasties in the northern region. It might be because the national fortune from those imperial dynasties has been injected into our great Xia dynasty, which is why the spiritual qi in our Chang'an City is increasing so rapidly. The emperor is indeed worthy of being a peerless prodigy, rarely seen in the eastern region for thousands of years. Under the emperor's leadership, our eastern region will definitely surpass other places. Long live the emperor! Long live the great Xia dynasty! At this time, all the cultivators of the great Xia dynasty were discussing their emperor, and of course, they mostly revered their emperor. However, if Chu Fan heard their words, he would definitely be very speechless, as what he desired was not just a simple long live. He desired longevity, and the great Xia dynasty would also be passed down forever. Of course, these cultivators of the eastern region only knew that the strongest great emperor-level experts could live for 10,000 years, so they hoped their emperor could become one of those great emperor-level experts. In fact, this was also due to the shallow knowledge of the cultivators in the eastern region. Otherwise, the lifespan of ordinary great emperor realm experts would exceed 10,000 years. Most of them are around 20,000 years. Stronger ones can even live longer. Xianyuan Human Emperor once lived for 50,000 years. Chapter 415, The Opportunity for Breakthrough, the Helplessness of the Ouyang family ancestor. This time, the increase in the Great Xia dynasty's national destiny brought about a spiritual qi recovery that wasn't limited to Chang'an City. The spiritual qi of the entire eastern region also increased significantly due to the Great Xia dynasty's rise in national destiny, though not as much as Chang'an City's. However, the cultivators in the eastern region originally had low cultivation, and this increase in spiritual qi allowed their cultivation to rise by a small rank. At the same time, they also felt that the realm they previously couldn't break through, they could now break through. It could even be said that those realms that were once impossible to break through were now slowly becoming accessible. There was no longer any talk of a bottleneck. However, Chu Fan, who was in the northern region, was unaware of all this. He didn't know what was happening in Chang'an City, nor did he know that the eastern region was experiencing a spiritual qi recovery because of him. Of course, even if he knew, he wouldn't show much reaction. Although the spiritual qi in the eastern region had recovered, this recovery had little effect on Chu Fan. Because the place where they cultivated was not here, their thoughts about the spiritual qi recovery in the outside world were naturally not great. Moreover, their cultivation within the Time Pagoda was almost like cheating. At this moment, Chu Fan had also settled down in the Xiaoyao Empire. Rather than saying he had settled down in the Xiaoyao Empire, it would be more accurate to say that he had already entered the Time Pagoda to cultivate. Due to the increase in the Great Xia dynasty's national destiny, Chu Fan's cultivation had also touched the Great Saint Realm. Now he only needed to go into seclusion to break through to the Great Saint Realm. Therefore, as the Great Xia dynasty's national destiny increased, Chu Fan immediately entered the Time Pagoda to cultivate. And it wasn't just Chu Fan who received a boost. The generals of the Great Xia dynasty also felt their qi growing stronger and stronger. It could be said that they all felt their rate of improvement had far exceeded what it was at the beginning. Their current cultivation speed was 3 times faster than before. In other words, a realm that once required 3 years to break through now required at most 1 year. After Chu Fan entered the Time Pagoda for secluded cultivation, the Great Xia dynasty's army continued to sweep across the entire northern region. The war on the Xiaoyao Empire side was almost over. After all, the emperor of the Xiaoyao Empire had already surrendered to the Great Xia dynasty, so now the Xiaoyao Empire only needed to have these cities controlled by the Great Xia dynasty. Meanwhile, another empire in the northern region was also engaged in a great battle. At this time, the army led by Yu Fei was heading towards the capital of the Ouyang family. The cities they passed through were taken in less than an hour. Later, the cities of the Shuanghua Empire directly surrendered upon hearing of this army. Thus, the speed of the army, led by Yu Fei, far exceeded their imagination. Half a month after Chu Fan went into seclusion, The army led by Yu Fei also appeared directly outside the Ouyang family's capital. The capital of the empire controlled by the Ouyang family was very prosperous, but now the capital did not look as harmonious as it seemed. It could be said that the entire capital was terrifyingly quiet. It was as if the end of the world had arrived. The old ancestor of the Ouyang family was in the main hall, staring ahead with a gloomy expression in his eyes. They had not expected the army led by Yu Fei to be so fast, taking down more than half of their empire in less than a month. It could even be said that the empire was now almost completely about to become territory of the Great Xia dynasty. This was also why the faces of these old ancestors of the Ouyang family looked so grim. Now, the old ancestor of the Ouyang family was not confident whether he could defend the empire. I never thought that the strength of this so-called Great Xia dynasty would be so powerful, actually reaching the capital of my empire in less than a month. An old ancestor of the Ouyang family said slowly with a hint of helplessness on his face, but it could be seen that the helplessness in his eyes was slowly turning into desolation. After all, they themselves did not believe they could win this great battle, so now their hearts were filled with worry. I heard that the Xiaoyao Empire has completely fallen. Even if we resist this army outside now, I'm afraid it will be difficult to resist the army from the Xiaoyao Empire. Another old ancestor of the Ouyang family also had a worried expression on his face at this moment, so he slowly stood up and spoke to the Saint King level experts present. Although his words might affect their morale, these words were a concrete reality. During this period, they had naturally heard about the great battle in the Xiaoyao Empire, and they also knew that the Xiaoyao Empire had completely fallen. And both of these armies originated from the Great Xia dynasty, so if they could defeat this army here, they would face the siege of two armies. Thinking of this, the old ancestors of the Ouyang family all had expressions of grief and indignation on their faces. However, even so, they had never thought of surrendering to the Great Xia dynasty. After all, if they surrendered to the Great Xia dynasty, their empire would cease to exist. Moreover, the Great Xia dynasty might not necessarily want them, the masters of these empires. Therefore, the old ancestor of the Ouyang family had never thought of surrendering. Alas, no matter what, we must fight to the death, otherwise, don't blame me for being ruthless. The Saint King level old ancestor of the Ouyang family, after hearing the words of these two old ancestors of the Ouyang family, also slowly stood up side and said, I could see a threat in the eyes of this old ancestor of the Ouyang family. Of course, his main targets of threat were the Saint King level experts other than those from the Ouyang family. At this moment, the Saint King level experts in the main hall were not just the old ancestors of the Ouyang family. The three old ancestors of the three great families of the empire were also in the main hall at this time. At this moment, the Su family ancestors' eyes were flickering with light, and no one knew what he was thinking. However, after hearing the words of this old ancestor of the Ouyang family, he still silently cupped his hands to this old ancestor of the Ouyang family. As for the two old ancestors of the Wang family and the Zhao family, upon hearing the words of the old ancestor of the Ouyang family, they looked at the old ancestor of the Ouyang family with firm expressions. The relationship between the Zhao family and the Ouyang family had always been friendly for generations, not to mention that the Zhao family and the Ouyang family had always been intermarried. Therefore, the Zhao family could not betray the Ouyang family. The one who could truly betray the Ouyang family was the Su family, because although the Su family was one of the three great families of the imperial capital, the relationship between the Su family and the Ouyang family was not very friendly to begin with. It was only because the Ouyang family's strength was too powerful that the Su family had always submitted to them. Chapter 416, The Su Family's Decision, the Mysterious Wang Family. As for the other Wang family, while they might not betray the Ouyang family, they might not mobilize the family's full strength for this great war. After all, the Wang family is an extremely mysterious existence throughout the northern region. Although the cultivation of the Wang family old ancestor is only at the Saint King realm, even the Ouyang family dares not easily touch the Wang family. This shows how extraordinary the Wang family is. This is also why the Wang family, despite being one of the three major families of the imperial capital, is ranked as the head of the three major families. This is because the Wang family was not originally a power in the northern region. The Wang family only appeared in the northern region due to certain events, and the old ancestor of the Ouyang family might know the Wang family's origins. After issuing the warning, the old ancestor of the Ouyang family dismissed the Saint King level experts present. Since the Great War was imminent, he naturally would not keep all these Saint King level experts confined here. Can we truly trust them? If they betray our Ouyang family later, I fear we won't even have a chance to react. After the three Saint King level experts departed, an old ancestor of the Ouyang family slowly stepped out and spoke while looking at the backs of the three Saint King level experts. At this moment, A light flickered in his eyes, and he carried a trace of killing intent. From this, one could discern the thoughts of this old ancestor of the Ouyang family. Although we cannot completely trust them, if we were to force another Saint King level cultivator to oppose our Ouyang family right now, we might run into trouble before the Great War even arrives. The ancestor at the perfected Saint King realm of the Ouyang family naturally understood this meaning, but they no longer had a choice. If they were to imprison these 3 Saint King level experts here now, the Ouyang family would face an early rebellion, and it would be even more difficult for them to face the Great Xia Dynasty's army then. Of course, the most important factor is that the Wang family's origins are extremely mysterious, so even the ancestor at the perfected Saint King realm of the Ouyang family dares not touch the Wang family. Otherwise, the Ouyang family might be destroyed prematurely. The other Saint King level old ancestors of the Ouyang family also sighed helplessly after hearing the words of the ancestor at the perfected Saint King realm of the Ouyang family. They naturally understood the meaning behind the words of their Saint King level old ancestor. At this point, they could only make this reluctant choice. Meanwhile, the Su family ancestor, having returned to the Su family, summoned the Su family head and the numerous Saint entry-level elders of the Su family to the Su family secret base. At this moment, the Su family ancestor wore a solemn expression, his eyes gazing profoundly at the elders of the Su family and the Su family head before him. Old ancestor, how should our Su family protect itself? Su Zhan, the Su family head, looked at the Su family ancestor and couldn't help but step forward to ask, while an imperceptible excitement flashed in his eyes. This great war was a disaster for the empire, but for their Su family, this great war was an opportunity. If they could surrender to the Great Xia Dynasty in advance, then the Su family would likely be met with an opportunity for even greater power. After hearing the words of the Su family head, the other elders all turned their gazes toward the Su family ancestor. At this moment, they also wanted to see how the Su family ancestor would reply. The Xiaoyao Empire has already been completely taken down by the Great Xia Dynasty, and the army we are about to face is also the Great Xia Dynasty's army. Therefore, the Ouyang family has no chance of victory this time. After hearing Su Zhan's words, the Su family ancestor slowly revealed the situation he knew, but as he spoke, his gaze drifted profoundly toward the assembled elders of the Su family. The meaning behind the Su family ancestor's words was already very clear. Since he had already stated that the Ouyang family had no chance of victory, it meant that their Su family could not continue to support the Ouyang family. In that case, what should we do? After hearing the words of the Su family ancestor, the Su family head looked at his old ancestor even more urgently and asked. He was indeed very anxious at this moment, because the army outside was already close to attacking their imperial capital. If they did not react soon, the attack of this army would await them. By then, their Su family would have no opportunities left. Thinking of this, the several elders of the Su family also turned their gazes toward the Su family ancestor. They also wanted to see the decision their old ancestor would make. Contact the army outside. We can join their ranks in advance. That way, it will be easier for them to take down the Ouyang family. The Su family ancestor immediately made up his mind and spoke directly to the Su family head and the Su family elders. After speaking, his gaze drifted profoundly forward, and then the Su family head and the Su family elders began discussing how to surrender to the Great Xia Dynasty to elevate the Su family status. Just as the Su family was discussing how to surrender to the Great Xia Dynasty, the Wang family old ancestor, in another direction, gathered the members of the Wang family in the Wang family's main hall. The main reason the Wang family old ancestor summoned his elders and family head to the main hall so openly was that the Ouyang family did not heavily monitor them. In fact, the Ouyang family dared not even plant spies within the Wang family. That is why the Wang family dared to discuss matters so openly in the main hall now. Have you gathered any clues regarding the army outside? The Wang family old ancestor immediately questioned the Wang family head before him. Their Wang family was not as simple as it appeared. It could even be said that the intelligence gathered by the Wang family spies far exceeded the intelligence of the Xiaoyao Empire spies. The army outside is the Great Xia Dynasty's army, but the Wang family has not yet ascertained their origins. We only know they might have come from the eastern region, but how could the eastern region possess such terrifying power? After hearing the words of his old ancestor, the Wang family head showed a hint of helplessness on his face. The Wang family spies had spread throughout the entire northern region, yet they could not clearly investigate the origins of this Great Xia Dynasty army outside. They only knew that this Great Xia Dynasty army outside might have come from the eastern region, but how could the eastern region have such a powerful state and army? Furthermore, there are no clues about the Great Xia Dynasty in the central region. After speaking, the Wang family head added another remark while looking at his old ancestor. From this statement, one could see that the relationship between the Wang family and the central region was not simple. Chapter 417, The Arrogant Wang Family, Yu Fei's Decision. When the other elders heard the Wang family head's words, expressions of surprise appeared on their faces. They had not expected that the army outside did not originate from the central region. Initially, they had all guessed that this army must have come from the central region, as only the central region could cultivate such a powerful force. Therefore, upon hearing the words of their family head, surprise naturally showed on their faces. If they truly did not come from the central region, then the power behind this army is likely not simple. One must know that this army took down the entire Xiaoyao Empire in just half a month. Although the Xiaoyao Empire is nothing compared to our Wang family, it is still a respectable entity in the northern region. The Wang family old ancestor also showed a hint of surprise at this moment. He then slowly began his analysis, his gaze subtly directed towards the eastern region. He did not believe such a powerful army could come from the eastern region. It was impossible for the eastern region to cultivate such a strong force. But if this army came from somewhere else entirely, that seemed equally unlikely. Therefore, the true origin of this army should be those peak powers in the central region. It could even be said that it should be related to the Heavenly Dao Alliance. Old Ancestor, how should we deal with this army next? After hearing the words of the Wang family old ancestor, the Wang family head immediately began questioning their old ancestor. Since they already knew this army was not simple, how should the Wang family confront it next? After the Wang family head finished speaking, the elders of the Wang family also looked towards their old ancestor, wanting to know how he planned to handle this army. Although our Wang family is settled in the northern region, we are ultimately destined to return to the central region. Therefore, as long as this army does not provoke our Wang family will naturally not actively provoke them. The Wang family old ancestor waved his hand after hearing the Wang family's words. Although the strength of this army was formidable, their Wang family did not fear it in the slightest. Thus, the Wang family old ancestor appeared very calm when facing the army of the Great Xia dynasty. At that time, the Wang family also had no intention of helping the Ouyang family, as there was fundamentally no relationship between the Wang family and the Ouyang family. So how could they possibly help the Ouyang family? Of course, the most crucial reason was that they could not fully discern the strength of the Great Xia dynasty's army. Otherwise, they naturally would not have put such an army in their sight. After the Wang family head heard his old ancestor's words, he understood. Following this, the Wang family acted as if nothing had happened. For them, the upcoming great battle had nothing to do with them. Furthermore, the Ouyang family dared not bother the Wang family. As for the Zhao family on the other side, they began discussing the matter. When a Zhao family old ancestor brought this news to the Zhao family members, the Zhao family reacted exactly as the old ancestor of the Ouyang family had anticipated. Their Zhao family had no intention of surrendering to the Great Xia dynasty. In fact, the Zhao family head even planned to stand or fall together with the Ouyang family. In truth, all of this was quite normal. After all, the relationship between their Zhao family and the Ouyang family was one of marriage alliance. Therefore, who knew whether the Great Xia dynasty would move against them after the Ouyang family was destroyed? Thus, their only chance now was to join forces with the Ouyang family to resist the Great Xia dynasty. This was also why the Zhao family stood so firmly on the side of the Ouyang family. Just as the three major families made different choices, Yu Fei and the others outside had completely set up camp outside the imperial capital. At this moment, Yu Fei had no intention of attacking the imperial capital immediately. As the commander-in-chief of the entire army, how could Yu Fei so easily launch a direct assault on the imperial capital before him? Yu Fei was the old ancestor of psychological warfare, so naturally, he planned to keep the Ouyang family and the entire empire's army hanging for now. By then, they could easily take down the Ouyang family and the entire empire. Currently, most of the empire's army is in the Ice Frost City before us. Therefore, what we must face this time are millions of imperial soldiers and several cultivators of the Saint King realm. Yu Fei gathered all the Saint King level experts who had joined the expedition to the empire inside the main camp. He began pointing at the map before him and introducing everything about Ice Frost City. Ice Frost City was the capital of the Shuanghua Empire. The main reason it was called Ice Frost City was that it was covered in wind and snow for most of the year. That is why this place was named Ice Frost City. Even the character Shuang, Frost, in Shuanghua Empire originated from here. Grand Marshal, just let me deploy troops and destroy them. I only need 100,000 soldiers. Just as Yu Fei finished speaking, Lu Bu stepped forward and said confidently. At the same time, a terrifying qi filled his body. He seemed like a god or demon who had fallen from the heavens into the mortal world. Grand Marshal, Zilong is also willing to lead troops to destroy Ice Frost City. Seeing Lu Bu step out, Zhao Zilong could not help but immediately step forward as well. After all, Ice Frost City before them represented attainable military merits. So how could Zhao Zilong miss out? Following the two of them stepping forward, the other generals also came out one after another. The cultivation of the 7 generals of the Yang family had already reached the perfected Saint realm or even the Saint King realm, so they were naturally looking forward to this great battle. We need to wait now, wait for an opportunity, and then use the fastest method to resolve the situation at Ice Frost City. Moreover, I believe someone will give us this chance. Yu Fei waved his hand upon hearing the generals requesting battle. His main purpose right now was to inform the assembled generals about the situation in Ice Frost City. But he had no intention of attacking Ice Frost City immediately. After all, Yu Fei knew that someone inside Ice Frost City would definitely give them an opportunity. Furthermore, Yu Fei believed that the longer they delayed, the more people inside Ice Frost City would surrender. After all, when it came to psychological warfare, Yu Fei was the old ancestor. Lu Bu, Zhao Zilong, and the others felt somewhat helpless after hearing Yu Fei's words. But at this moment, they could only obey Yu Fei's command. After all, Yu Fei was one of the 4 Grand Marshals of their great Xia dynasty, so how could they dare disobey his orders? Of course, the most important thing was that Yu Fei's methods of leading troops and fighting battles earned their deep admiration, so they naturally dared not disregard his commands. In fact, Yu Fei's psychological attack was very effective against the Shuanghua Empire. The soldiers inside Ice Frost City were already feeling uneasy. With their army stationed outside, the soldiers inside Ice Frost City began to struggle internally. Chapter 4:18 Sheng Yao Jin, who left everyone helpless before launching the attack. After all, they all knew just how powerful the army outside was, so they were currently worried about how much damage this army would inflict once it entered. At this moment, some soldiers were even starting to plot how to escape. It could be said that the entire Ice Frost City was currently in a state of panic. Even the generals who had already reached the King realm showed unease and worry in their eyes at this time. In this state, Ice Frost City was naturally extremely vulnerable. Nevertheless, even so, Yu Fei had no intention of issuing the order to attack at this time. What Yu Fei truly wanted was to take Ice Frost City without lifting a finger, so naturally, he chose not to move a single soldier at this moment. However, the generals under him were starting to become restless, as this was, after all, a clear opportunity for military merit right before their eyes. The most restless one at this moment was Lu Bu. He looked forward to Yu Fei issuing the order to attack every day. But as 2 days passed, Yu Fei still did not issue the command to attack. Just as the generals were about to seek out Yu Fei to request battle once again, Yu Fei's order finally arrived. Yu Fei requested the generals to come to his main camp to discuss the attack. Upon hearing Yu Fei's command, expressions of excitement finally appeared on the faces of the generals. Even Zhao Zilong was extremely excited as he headed toward Yu Fei's military camp. Following this, the generals involved in the attack on Ice Frost City all appeared inside Yu Fei's main camp. They also saw a middle-aged man beside Yu Fei, whose body emanated a faint aura of the King realm. The middle-aged man looked at Yu Fei with a respectful expression. At the same time, upon seeing the generals of the great Xia dynasty continuously appearing in the main camp, the middle-aged man's eyes were filled with awe and shock. Although the middle-aged man did not know what level of power the incoming generals had reached, he could sense that any one of these incoming generals could easily crush him. Therefore, the middle-aged man, enduring this terrifying pressure, slightly lowered his gaze. Under the pressure exerted by Lu Bu and the others, he did not even have the opportunity to raise his head. Haven't you all been thinking about how to attack Ice Frost City? Today, the opportunity to attack Ice Frost City is right before you. So, who wants to be the vanguard for this attack? Looking at the generals of the great Xia dynasty before him, all radiating battle intent, Yu Fei finally revealed a smile. He then slowly unfolded the map on the table and spoke leisurely. However, his words were like a torch, immediately igniting the fervor in the hearts of the generals present. Reporting to the marshal, I, Lu Bu, am willing to be the vanguard for this time. Lu Bu immediately bowed toward Yu Fei, his voice resounding through the entire main camp like a clap of thunder. His eyes contained an expression of determined resolve. The excitement in his eyes was instantly released, no longer concealable. But how could the other generals possibly give up this opportunity? Zhao Zilong immediately stepped forward, cupped his fists toward Yu Fei, and spoke. Marshal, Zilong also wishes to go. Zhao Zilong's words were like a match, igniting even more generals present. Marshal, I, Yang the eldest, am willing to be the vanguard this time. Marshal, I, Yang the second, am also willing to be the vanguard this time. This time's vanguard must be none other than I, Cheng Yao Jin. A rogue voice suddenly mixed in among the many shouts, causing everyone's gaze to turn toward Cheng Yaojin. Although Cheng Yaojin was a summoned character, his cultivation at this time was merely the entering saint realm. Furthermore, and more importantly, he was only at the early stage, making him the most conspicuous presence among the generals. Even Yu Fei couldn't help but look toward Cheng Yaojin. He hadn't expected Cheng Yaojin to want to be the vanguard. It should be known that Cheng Yaojin was usually responsible for escorting provisions, but this fellow, for some unknown reason, wanted to step out and be the vanguard now. What's wrong? Can't I, old Cheng, be the vanguard? Seeing everyone's gazes fixed strangely upon him, Cheng Yaojin looked at the crowd with a wronged expression, as if he were the victim in this situation. The Ouyang family, at the very least, possesses Saint King level existences. How could you, a mere cultivator of the entering saint realm, possibly serve as the vanguard? Wouldn't that ruin the great Xia dynasty's plans? Lu Bu did not indulge Cheng Yaojin after hearing his words. He immediately stepped forward and spoke to Cheng Yaojin. After speaking, a hint of pride appeared on Lu Bu's face. It was as if he was proud of successfully reaching the Saint King realm, and simultaneously proud that his realm was higher than Cheng Yaojin's. So what if your realm is high? I, old Cheng, can also be a vanguard. Cheng Yaojin was even more unconvinced after hearing Lu Bu's words. He spoke to Yu Fei with a wronged expression. As he spoke, he did not forget to glance at the generals present. He did not forget to glance at Zhao Zilong either. It was as if he was expressing dissatisfaction toward these people with high realms. When Yu Fei saw Cheng Yaojin acting this way, he helplessly rubbed his forehead. Although Cheng Yaojin's strength was indeed not high, Yu Fei had heard from his emperor that Cheng Yaojin was a lucky general who could sometimes bring them good fortune. It could even be said that in a critical moment, Cheng Yaojin might save their lives. This was why Yu Fei always kept Cheng Yaojin by his side. Otherwise, Yu Fei would not choose to bring along Cheng Yaojin, this chatterbox, over a general at the perfected saint realm. Marshal, since Cheng Yaojin wants to be the vanguard, let him follow us. This time, let Lu Bu and I serve as the vanguard. As for the 7 generals of the Yang family, they can follow behind the 2 of us and launch the attack on Ice Frost City. What does the marshal think of this arrangement? Zhao Zilong saw that Yu Fei also felt helpless about Cheng Yaojin, so he slowly stepped forward and presented his suggestion. Immediately after Zhao Zilong finished speaking, Lu Bu gave him a look of affirmation. Clearly, Lu Bu also found Zhao Zilong's proposal to be very reasonable. Of course, the most important reason why he highly agreed with Zhao Zilong was that Zhao Zilong suggested that he and Zhao Zilong serve as the vanguard. The 7 generals of the Yang family also nodded after hearing Zhao Zilong's words. Clearly, they had no objection to Zhao Zilong's plan. After all, according to Zhao Zilong's plan, the 7 generals of the Yang family would also be considered the vanguard.